Department of Public Health and the University of Illinois Extension. So we are just thrilled that you could join us for the third and final day of the series. Our first session was actually on Tuesday, where we addressed that to the local health department regulators. And then our second day, yesterday, was addressed to farmers market managers. And then today's session is specifically designed for farmers market vendors. So we are so glad that you're here. My name is Jenna Smith. I am a food and nutrition educator with Illinois Extension. Also moderating today will be Janie Maxwell, so she might help us out a little bit. Some of our other partners with IDPH might help us out too. So we just really appreciate having everyone involved as well. We are definitely excited to wrap up the series, focusing on some of the important just food safety practices, regulations, and just considerations that apply directly to all of those that are selling at markets. So just a few housekeeping things that I do want to make sure that I mention before we get started. The session is being recorded. The recording will eventually be housed on the Illinois Farmers Market Association's website for future viewing. So you can tune into that, and we'll be sure to send out an email to everyone letting you know when that recording is available. I'm going to also, maybe just for help here, I'll go ahead and place the agenda in the chat box. That might just help so that you can see what we have planned for today. You might have heard we might not necessarily quite have our meat and poultry person here and available, but if not, we'll hopefully maybe try to answer some questions or provide some kind of level of detail that we can, but we'll see how that goes. So please make sure to mute your microphones, but definitely we want to hear from you. So feel free to type your questions and comments in the chat box during the presentations. We will also be sharing a short evaluation toward the end of the session, so we would greatly appreciate you taking a moment to complete that. Janie, did I miss anything, or is there anything else that you want to share before we get started?
No, just again, grateful for all of you being here, taking the time, and very grateful for all of our presenters that are with us today. So I think we're ready to get started.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, very good. So I just put the agenda in the chat so you can kind of see what we've got planned, give or take, in terms of the actual time frame. So, but I will go ahead at this time. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Lori Meiser with the Illinois Department of Ag to get us started talking about eggs. Let's see, Lori, do you want to share your screen? Do you have capabilities to do that?
We'll try. Actually, it's not letting me have the share button.
Let's see here what we can do. Okay, and let's see. Looks like, Janie, maybe you have to allow her.
No.
It is not giving me capabilities.
It shouldn't be. Let me just see.
I don't know why.
We haven't had, I usually set all calls to just let anybody share. So
Oh, okay.
It should be. Here we go.
Perfect.
Right. Hopefully. Now, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
You can see the lead slide?
Yes, it says Illinois Department of Agriculture Egg Inspection Program.
All right, thanks. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Meiser. I work for the Illinois Department of Agriculture in the Division of Food Safety and Animal Protection. and I'm going to talk to you about the egg inspection program and actually about how it applies to farmers markets. And just as a point of reference, within our division, we govern shell eggs for human consumption, but also hatching eggs in live poultry. If you have an issue with hatching eggs in live poultry, that's actually the Bureau of Animal Health and Welfare, and their rules differ, especially for on-farm cells. So in the egg inspection program, it's governed by the Illinois Egg and Egg Products Act, and that act has been around since 1965. It's largely to do with quality and to make sure that the producers within the state of Illinois have a level playing field, because a lot of the shell eggs actually come into Illinois from other areas. So it deals with quality, labeling, honesty, and licensing. We also conduct investigations or if we receive a complaint. So within the act, there are a lot of different definitions, and the ones that you might be interested in are at the top and the bottom in this section. If you are licensed with the department to sell shell eggs, it actually covers chicken, turkey, duck, goose, guinea. We get lots of calls about quail eggs, but we do not have any rules govern quail eggs for human consumption. And then at the bottom, the definition for sell, and you'll see that it includes the word traffic, and that's what gets a lot of people in trouble and why they need to have a license in Illinois. And then also eggs sold at retail. So producers can sell their eggs for human consumption on their farm without having to have a license. But once they take them off of the premise where the poultry reside, then they need to have a license. And so I spoke probably to part of this group earlier this year, and we have a packet of information that we send out if people are applying for a limited license, which is usually small producers. And within that packet of information, you will see the farmers market requirements. And this is what we're going to go through today with some additional photos. So the first requirement is that to sell at a farmer's market, you have to have a license. This is the part of the act that requires the license, and it also tells the exceptions, which is a common question. And again, that's where it says that you can sell your eggs for human consumption from your farm, but once you take them off of the farm and sell them, you have to have a license. And we have two different types of licenses. The limited license, which costs only $15. It means you're only selling eggs that you produce from your poultry, or a full license, which is $50. And that means you're getting eggs from another source. So maybe you're getting eggs from your neighbors or just some other location, then you would have a full license. Our licenses expire with the fiscal year, June 30th. So we're April 1st, we started our new licensing season. And you can go on the department website, the link at the bottom, and it tells you who has current licenses. It sometimes takes a few days to update this time of year. So the second requirement is that the eggs must be clean. And there are different requirements based on the size of the producer. If you have less than 3,000 laying hens, you are exempt from the USDA and FDA rules. The eggs still have to be clean, and there's still a water temperature requirement, which is at least 90 degrees. But you don't have to meet the same requirements as far as wash solutions and sanitizers. You just need to make sure that they're safe and suitable for use. It's important not to be soaking eggs, so that needs to be a continuous flow of water. The water needs to be potable. And you need to make sure that you're not using anything that would cause the egg to take up a scent. And so this document is from the Center for Food Security and Public Health, and I often send it out from Iowa as information about washing eggs on the farm. And then there's also this document, which has a lot of information if you're a small producer in a lot of different areas that can help you with the process. And we include both of those when we send out the packet of information. The third requirement is that they have to use new cartons. So new consumer size cartons when you're making a retail sell. And this is the part of the regulations that requires that. It is often a very frustrating topic for most small producers because the cartons can be expensive. But the eggs have to be pre-packaged and they have to be in a new carton when they're sold retail to the end consumer. Then the fourth requirement involves canneling and grading. This part of the act actually contains a lot of the requirements that a small producer is going to have to meet. So again, all eggs designated for sale off of the premise where the entire flock is located, such as at a farmer's market, at retail, or for institutional use, must be canned and graded and held in a place or room in which the temperature may not exceed 45 degrees. They have to be refrigerated within 36 hours after they're laid. They are also to be refrigerated at the time they're processed from that time on. During transportation, from the point that they're processed, they have to be maintained 45 above freezing and less than 45 degrees ambient temperature. This part of the law also explains what's required for labeling as far as the grade, the size, and we'll talk about that more here in a bit. The packer identification, the canneling date, the expiration date, and whether they're grade A or double A, and the sell-by date. So egg canneling is basically using a light to look at the interior quality of the egg. You also can use that same light as you're examining the exterior of the egg. It's not an exact science. It's basically the more you look at eggs, the more you'll see and the more you will learn. And we'll talk about that here a little bit more about what makes it easier or harder or the differences in the lights. I get asked a lot, like, how do I learn how to do this? And the USDA egg grading manual is available for free. If you Google, you can search and find it and download it, or we can email it to you. But I often refer people to these two clips that are from Georgia because they have one about interior and one for exterior egg quality. And in about 10 minutes time, you can learn a lot of information about grading and canneling eggs. Texas A&M usually each spring has actually a seminar and does a lot of information about grading, which is going to cover some aspects of Texas law, but the aspects of grading are going to be the same, and it can be quite helpful. So again, what you're looking at is to decide if you have a grade AA, A, or B quality egg, and you're looking at the internal and external qualities of the egg. So you see one egg here, it has a check, which is probably the most common quality issue that we see. And then the other one has dried adherent material on it that would also make that egg not acceptable. The size of the egg is based on when you weigh them, and we don't have specific requirements on what you have to use for a scale. Most people will use a small kitchen digital scale. A lot of families like to have where they can weigh one egg at a time because they're doing it with their children. But as a point of reference, if you have a dozen large eggs, they weigh 24 ounces. That's the requirement that you have to meet. So you have to make sure that you're not short weighting your carton and that you have that minimum requirement met. So this is an example of one of our graders using his light to check eggs. And you can see it's pretty lit up around him. And after you're more comfortable, it will be easier for you to do it. But when you start out, if you're in a darker environment, it's going to be a lot easier. If you gather your eggs every day, you're not going to really see much of an air cell because it develops with time. And that's what you're looking at largely to determine the grade. So when you apply, we will have an inspector set up a time to meet with you and help you, and we will either mail you or bring you an air cell gauge, which will help you to learn how to judge how big the air cell is. So these are some examples of just some cheap LED lights. You can look at the red one and see that that's probably doesn't cost $1 now, but they used to cost about $1. And you can see the difference in the one photo. There's some natural light. You can't really see within the egg. But if that same egg is now just inside a cardboard box, that's the only darkness that's being offered, how you can see the air cell at the top. In the middle, that's a pretty bright light, but it's not specifically penetrating the egg, and you can see how you can't really see the contents. And then on the right, if the red light maybe has 100, the one on the right might have 300 lumens. Not really sure how they're rated, but it's a brighter light. You can see the difference too when it's in the natural light, when it's darker, and how much better you can see the egg. So you can have pretty inexpensive equipment to do this. You can just get yourself a good LED flashlight. So again, a grade AA egg is an egg that has an air cell that's 1/8 of an inch or less. And on the other end, you have grade B. I'm not really sure how well this is showing up, but the air cell is considerably larger. This is an example you can also find when you're out researching and learning, and it takes you through the differences of grade A down to B. So what you're looking for is you want to make sure that you don't have eggs that have checks, which is a hairline fracture in the egg. So a crack, but it's not leaking. The membrane is intact. You don't want your eggs to be dirty. You certainly don't want leakers. And then there's a wide variety of internal faults that you don't want, from blood to meat spots. You don't want them to be frozen or cooked, or adulterated in any way. So this is an example of a meat spot. You can see when it's being candled, you can see the dot, and then with the egg broke open, the meat spots are actually a piece of tissue that gets in with the egg and the reproductive tract when it's being formed. And the air cell gauge, if you look up in the top, there's that small circle, and that's how you learn to gauge whether it's an acceptable, whether the egg is a loss or not. If it's bigger than the circle, so 1/8 of an inch, then that egg is a loss for a meat spot or a blood spot. So here's an example of an egg broke out that had a blood spot in it. And then this is an example of an egg that has blood pretty much all through it. You can see in the top that you really don't notice it, but when you put it closer to the light, how you can see the blood within it. When you're looking at the exterior, you're not looking just at cleanliness, but you're looking at shape, and you're looking for wrinkles, calcium deposits, anything that makes that egg abnormal. And like in the bottom, you can see of the 2 eggs how much different the shape is. And so the shape, the egg that's really elongated, that would make that a B egg because it doesn't have a normal shape. So the 5th requirement is temperature. So a 45-degree ambient temperature. They need to be off the ground. The temperature applies during transportation. As we discussed before, they have to be refrigerated 36 hours after they're laid or at all times after they're processed. And we just remind people that they need to check with local officials because our law is 45, but a lot of farmers markets follow the food code, so it makes it 41. The 6th requirement is that Illinois collects egg inspection fees. So if you apply for a license, you will have to submit based on the calendar year how many cases of eggs you've sold. So a case is 30 dozen, and if you don't meet the $1 requirement, you don't owe any money, but you have to send the form back or you won't get your license sent out. And so you have to keep track of that. That fee only applies to the eggs that you're selling at a location other than your premise where your poultry are. So you can still sell your eggs on your farm without meeting all of these requirements. But once you take them to a farmer's market, then you have to track it. The seventh requirement regards the labeling. So you have to pack your eggs in a new carton, and you have to have a system in place to put the Julian pack date. So the day that you pack them corresponds to a Julian code, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then you need either a best by, an expiration sell by. We don't limit how you word it. And that sell by date is based on whether you pick grade A or grade AA. Grade A is good for 45 days, whereas grade AA is good for 30 days. You have to have the size of the eggs on the carton, what type of eggs they are, your name and address, and we recommend that people put their license number. So this is an example of a Julian calendar. So it starts where the first day of the year would be 001, and in a normal year, December 31st is 365, and that's what you put on the carton for the packing, for the pack date, for tracking. And these are some examples. A lot of small producers will buy the cartons that have a lot of the information already on the carton as far as grade and size, and then they might use an address sticker and then write on their Julian pack date and sell by date. Some of them will use the little stickers, like you can see the price on there, but some of them will use a sticker like that to put their pack date on. And then you can see the other examples where they have a best by date, they have a packer ID, and a Julian code. This is the picture that's in the farmer's market guide. So again, the requirements for labeling are a Julian pack date and a sell by date, a grade and a size, a name and address, and a license. And we do allow you to write on the cartons. You do not have to provide an invoice at a farmer's market as long as you're selling to the end consumer. But if you get a license and you wholesale, you sell your eggs to the local farm store and they're going to resell them, then you will have to provide them a invoice. And then when our staff goes and checks that location, they will ask to see the invoice, or if they perform an inspection with you, they'll ask for your invoices. So basically it needs to tell who shipped the product, the name and the address, and who it was shipped to, the name and the address, the grade and size, and the quantity of the eggs, and then a statement about the egg inspection fee. And again, we have examples of this in the packet that we sent out. So some of the common violations that we see are for quality, most commonly checks, labeling. This week, one of my inspectors went to a chain of grocery stores that was taking a dozen of eggs and cutting the carton in half and selling 6 at a time, which you can't do because you have to have all of the information on each part of the carton. You can have 6 packs of eggs, but you can't be cutting the carton in half. Sanitation, rotation. Sometimes we find eggs that have expired on the shelf, temperature violations, invoice violations. In the last year, it's been pretty common that we get a lot of complaints about people going to Wisconsin and getting nest run eggs and bringing them back to Illinois and selling them, which is not allowed. And then not having a license, or not having a carton of eggs that don't meet the minimum weight requirement for the size. So short weighting the eggs. So it's important to remember that you are preparing a food product. Our inspectors are checking sanitation, but we're more based on quality. But washing your hands can never be enough. You need to have a process in place and make sure that you're especially if you are washing your eggs in your kitchen. I always tell people that you need to make sure it's clean to start and you need to do a really good cleanup at the end, and that you need to make sure that you're rotating different types of cleaners and sanitizers so that you're effectively cleaning that area so you don't cross-contaminate and affect your family. There has been a lot more in the news about salmonella in eggs in the last year than there was previously. And FDA is, I guess, concerned about small producers because a lot of it, most of it, that's where it's traced back to. As we went to the idea that cage-free and pasture-raised is better, this the management methods have changed and the eggs are not as clean and the processes are not necessarily as clean. And they will tell you, FDA, that, in over 20 years, they saw just a handful of outbreaks, but last year there were 3. You hear a lot also about high path avian influenza and what you can do to protect your flock when the migratory waterfowl are moving, but that's not your only concern. So you need to make sure that you're a good animal caretaker and that you have a good biosecurity plan in place. And the cleaner and drier the environment is for your poultry, for your chickens, their nest boxes, then the cleaner your eggs are going to be. I know that's not necessarily true if you have ducks, but with chickens, it certainly is. So if you have them in a clean environment and you're gathering your eggs every day, you're going to have a lot less problems. But it's also important to make sure that they have fresh, clean water supplies, that you're storing your feed to keep other pests and rodents out of it, as well as birds. If you're buying from a source that you really don't know where the baby chicks are coming from, you really need to do some evaluating of what they're vaccinated for, because there's a lot of other disease processes going on and it could cause you problems down the road. There's also been a lot of information in the news, and actually the salmonella seems to all connect, where there's a lot of backyard flocks and kids that were getting sick from their chickens. So USDA has a lot of information for defending your flock and things that you can do to help keep your poultry healthy. And they have a lot of information that's free and available to you. But the most important thing is, if you do have a problem, to make sure that you're reporting it, whether it's to the department or to your local veterinarian. In the last couple of years, we've had a lot of reports of people that have Merrick's, and they actually tell you that that's probably the most common problem that you see in chickens. You get up and you check your chickens and you'll have one that's no longer able to walk. That's typically Merrick's. We have also received, especially in the northern part of the state, people that have egg drop syndrome. And so the eggs are misshaped and malformed. And also, I guess I will tell you, infectious laryngotracheitis has been something. The viruses have been around for a really long time. And if you have poultry and they haven't really been exposed to any other chickens, and you go to a swap meet or somewhere and you buy chickens and bring them back and mix them with yours, it's pretty common. Then we get reports from people that their chickens have died. And typically, a lot of times, it's infectious laryngotracheitis, which requires a special test where they look for inclusion bodies in the trachea to really find out what's causing the death. But we hear about that commonly as well. This is an example of a retail brochure that we have. It's just a good reminder of all the things that are required for a retail sale. And we have these available if somebody would like to have them sent out to them. And then also, when you get the packet for a limited license, we have this checklist at the end to help you with what equipment and what you need to do. And with that, this is our phone number for our contacts. The email was on the first slide, which I can put back up, and I can take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Meiser. Yeah, if there are any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
I have a question. And it has to do with aerosol. So when you pack the egg, as you said, right, usually there's not much of or any aerosol because it's a fresh, brand new egg. But the egg shell grows over time. So whether your eggs are A or double A, do you need to recheck those eggs and measure that space if maybe you're 25 days out from when you first measured it?
Nope, it's based on the day that you pack them. So
Okay.
I hope that makes sense to you. So you would
Yeah.
do it the day that you pack them, and that's how you would base the grading.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So as far as cottage food products, if you are selling eggs on the premises where your poultry are, we don't require any licensing. But most local health officials, if you are making cottage food, they want you to have a license. So you're going to need to check with your local officials. I left that slide out today, but eggs are touched by a lot of different entities, from FDA to USDA to public health to your local health officials. And so you will have to make sure, if you have a cottage food certificate, that you're doing what they want. And most of them require you to have a license where you're doing all of the requirements: washing, candling, grading, refrigerating. There is some difference though. You would invoice them to yourself. And in that situation, if you want to get the plastic flats that can be reused and washed, you can use those. But again, if you are having a retail sale, you have to have new consumer size cartons. If you have an additional question for that, let me know. Okay.
Yeah, Lori, if you want to just drop your email in the chat, that would be great.
I just shared mine, and then that'll come directly to me. If you go on the department website, you can see the agr.eggs. But this is just easier. It will come directly to me and I can help you. Is there any other questions?
Okay. Well, thank you. It truly has been very helpful. I enjoyed too all of your slides with all those great pictures. So thank you so much. Okay, well, we will go ahead and transition now. Dara, do we have Dr. John O'Keefe available?
I don't believe, or Dr. John O'Keefe is not available, but I believe we have a representative from the Bureau of Meat and Poultry Inspection here.
Wonderful.
I think. Are you able to unmute?
Hi, this is Natalie. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
Natalie, you're here. Oh,
I am here. If somebody else is here,
This is Nate Shoemaker. Yes, I'm here.
okay.
we have
Go ahead, Nate.
two. Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, so we have two representatives here. Go ahead, guys. I leave it to you to take the lead.
So, Natalie, did you want me to jump into it, or did you have something somewhat prepared? I apologize to everyone on the call. There was a bit of a recent scheduling conflict, so I am not the most prepared, but I will do the best I can.
You go right ahead, Nate. If I'll be here for backup.
All right. How much time am I allotted?
Well,
Yeah,
we
or was
have,
this scheduled for, or is
sure.
it
I mean, we
fairly
have,
open?
oh, it's fairly open. We've got about 30 minutes or so if you want to try to kind of aim for that.
Well, I think I can come in far under that.
That's fine
Uh,
too.
so the topic, as I understand, is the requirements for selling meat and poultry products in the state of Illinois at a farmer's market, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in order to do that, typically you would either have to be under the poultry or rabbit exemption, so grower producer under 7,500 head. You would have to be a retail operation with a retail license, or you would have to have the meat and poultry product be inspected and passed either by the Illinois Department of Agriculture or by FSIS, the Federal Department of Agriculture. So more specifically, if obviously if you had your own slaughter and processing plant and were applying the mark of inspection either from the state of Illinois or from FSIS, that would be fine. If you were raising your own animals and had them slaughtered at a licensed facility, again, either state or federal, and that product bore the mark of inspection, then that would also be acceptable. Those are the general guidelines. Was there something anyone would want me to get more into detail on or have more specifics? Or if Natalie had anything to add, obviously feel free.
I know from experience that we get a lot of questions about whether a broker's license is required to sell at a farmer's market.
That's what I was just gonna say. I know that's come up a lot in the past, and so IDOA does not require that you have a broker's license to sell at a farmer's market, since the end sale is retail. The broker's license basically covers wholesale. They're kind of a broker. They, purchase meat from inspected product from one place and then they sell it to somebody else that's going to resell it. Um, that being said, I know that there are sometimes some plants, some farmers markets that ask if somebody's going to be reselling meat, even if it's retail, that they do get a broker's license with us. And we certainly can do that. It's just, as far as we're concerned, it's not a requirement.
We also get questions about if vendors in Illinois are wanting to cross state lines, is there any requirements for that?
So if they're crossing state lines, we just coming into Illinois, we request anything coming in has a USDA mark of inspection on it. And typically that's what we tell people if they're going to be selling outside of Illinois, that, that just needs to be USDA inspected.
Natalie, if I may jump in for a moment.
Sure.
So that is where it can get a little bit complicated because different states have different requirements as far as amenability. So there might be certain meat or poultry products that do enter the state of Illinois with a state inspection legend of another state. And the reason that is, it might be, just as an example, quail breast from South Carolina. The quail is not amenable to FSIS, but it is amenable to South Carolina. So it would be subject to the South Carolina Poultry Inspection Program, but in interstate commerce, it is then subject to FDA regulations. I've also received questions of retailers wanting to sell, say at festivals or events outside of the state of Illinois. And there's federal requirements as far as having a retail license, and that it is employees of that retail business. federal compliance will also caution you may want to check with state public health and that local jurisdiction because they might have additional requirements that are not FSIS, USDA requirements, and they might have requirements that differ from the state of Illinois. So if you're selling out of state, you always want to be aware. So that was all I wanted to add on that topic.
Okay, are there any questions at all for either Nate or Natalie? We thank you so much, you two, for jumping in. We know it's the last minute here. That's helpful to at least have someone to be able to answer some of the questions.
Nate or Natalie, I know one thing that we talk about with local health departments is when we might not see a mark of inspection.
Yeah, so when a retail store, and Nate, feel free to take over if you want. But if a retail store has a product that was processed under inspection, if they bring it in, they can repackage that and use the retail label on it. That would not have a mark of inspection then. Good example would be like Sam's Club, say they get 40 pounds of ground beef and they break it down to 1 pound packs. So it originated from a product that was inspected, but the end result does not have that mark on it. There should be receipts or something allowing trace back though.
And then also if the poultry exemption, if they qualify under that, that would not necessarily have a mark of inspection on it.
Yeah, if I'm understanding the legislation correctly, it would have labeling that would say exempt,
Yeah, I
right?
think it's actually, yeah, it is laid out in there. I can't, off the top of my head, I cannot remember what it's supposed to say, but uh not inspected maybe. Yes, there should be some sort of
Yeah, I believe it's
illustrating.
not inspected.
Yeah. And I can put my contact information on here, so if anybody's got any other questions, they can get a hold of me.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. I know you guys are really good and have that another like the agr.eggs. You have an AGR that you
Yes.
guys offer too.
Yes. Yep. I'll put that up here.
Yep, it says Lori helped us out and put it in the chat. If it's under that poultry exemption, it says not inspected exempt PL 90-492.
Yep, that's it. Awesome.
Say any more questions? What are the requirements for halal meats?
Oh, was there something specific about halal meat?
Just says what in general is the requirements.
Well, if you're any business, and this is more in Natalie's wheelhouse, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. Any business that's advertising their product is halal would need to have a halal license with the Illinois Department of Agriculture.
Yep, that's the bottom line. They have to register with us, and in order to register with us, they would either need a letter from a local certified halal imam or a if they're a retail store, they could just have like a copy of the paperwork from the processor that shows they are certified as a halal processor. Again, it's kind of a chain of custody thing. We're just kind of looking to make sure that that product has stayed halal until it gets to the end consumer. And they can always, at this point in time, there's still so much going on with the Halal Act and everything. We just usually have them contact me and, I can help them figure out what they need.
Thank you. That answered the question. I don't see any more questions for you all. Again, we really appreciate with that scheduling issue, you guys jumping in to be able and available for Q&A. I'm not seeing any more. So
Okay, yes. Well, thank you so, so much for jumping in. We appreciate that. If we want to go ahead, we can move on then to our next speaker. It looks like Guy Sprouts. Are you ready to talk about dairy? Okay, I know I saw Guy Sprouts on here earlier. Oh, there he is.
I'm here. I'm here. I was trying to find the mute, but I also tried to share my power or my presentation, and it just completely blacked out the whole screen.
Oh,
So
no.
give me a second to try and share this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'm guessing um, you would like me to keep this within the time frame.
Well, I mean, if we don't go too far over, we're fine with that. But you do what you need to do, Guy.
I'm notorious for taking more time than I'm allotted.
you got some extra time automatically, Guy.
You do, you
I know
do.
this.
Guy, do you need
I will
a
try not.
10-minute warning?
I think I can get through this fairly quickly. It's really a short and simple topic to talk about as far as raw milk rules and regulations and how they impact farmers markets. It can't be sold there. It can't be used to make any of the products that are sold at the markets. But I'm going to go over real quickly what are the requirements for people to sell raw milk, since a lot of people on this call are involved with farm to table food systems. And I will also highlight that there are risks, but I do not give opinions or judgments. But I'll get started. I'll skip the first few because I think everybody knows Illinois Department of Public Health, some of the things we do, our location offices, or location of offices, overview of some of the projects and programs we oversee. Those were all required that I have to present. Now, raw milk is a fascinating topic, and people become incredibly passionate about it. Incredibly passionate. In fact, there's probably a lot more illnesses caused by raw milk than we're aware of, but people do not come forward because they just say, I got sick for a few days, I feel better. They don't want to lose their source. They don't want to get somebody in trouble. But why do they seek it out? One of the things people talk about is the direct connection to the producer, seeing where their food comes from. They believe it's more nutritious and wholesome. Yes and no. It is more nutritious in that when you buy whole milk at the grocery store, it's standardized to 3.25% butterfat. When you buy it from the farm directly, it has not been separated. So you're looking anywhere from 4 to 7% butterfat. So it really changes the calorie density and the flavor. Some people believe it cures lactose intolerance or it's easier to digest. Wrong. It cures or helps with autism. Wrong. Cures and helps with asthma and allergies. Highly debatable. That's based off of research in Scandinavia, looking at asthma between country kids drinking raw milk and city kids living in urban housing. It really did not take into account germ theory and the continual exposure that the children are having on the farm at non-clinical or infectious doses. One of my favorites, people believe that pasteurization kills the good bacteria and the probiotics. And wow, they often like to talk about we're killing lactobacillus. things that naturally protect the milk. Wrong. Technically, milk should almost be a sterile substance coming out of the teat unless the cow is ill. Lactobacillus means the cow's teat wasn't clean before it was milked. And one of my favorites also is that they think they're getting immunofactors, immunoglobulins, and antimicrobials in the milk that will be beneficial. There's a lot of people right now seeking colostrum, that very first milk, because especially the immunoglobulins in it. A bovine immune system or a sheep or a goat does not work in a human. So they have their reasons, and we're not going to change those. So at Public Health, we believe in risk mitigation, and if we can't control what we believe is not a safe practice, how can we make it safer at least? So we have raw milk rules, but as a bonus, you might get some extra protein in your raw milk. Things such as Campylobacter, Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, Brucella, Mycobacterium bovis. Uh, that's tuberculosis, folks. Cryptosporidium, Coxilia brunetti, Q fever, and Staphylococcus, just to name a few. And, you know, they look cute and fuzzy in a photo. They are not warm and cuddly little creatures. You don't want them. But why do we care about milk so much? It's a simple answer. From a biochemical or biology standpoint, milk is one of the best culture medias for growing bacteria following blood. It has a perfect matrix of fats, carbohydrates, proteins, amino acids, trace elements, and minerals. It is an incubator. And I'm just going to keep saying it comes with risk, but anything you put in your mouth comes with risk. So, where does the milk actually get contaminated from in most situations? It's from the cow's skin, bedding, manure, milking environment, the equipment being used to milk, and how clean is it? The standards for cleanliness in dairy, if I see film on it and it's not shiny, it's not clean. If I see anything that looks like a rainbow hue on it, it's not clean because that's a protein residue. We take sanitation incredibly seriously. Uh, Employees, bad practices, not proper hand washing, touching the flank of a cow and then a clean teat. You could have contaminated water, or worse yet, you can have asymptomatic animals. About 30% of all dairy cows in North America carry Campylobacter naturally in their digestive system. It doesn't make them ill the way it makes you and I ill. But I will, this is my cleaned up version without shocking photos. But if you've ever been on a dairy farm, cows drink on average 80 to 90 gallons of water a day. They can eat 70 pounds of feed a day. When they go to the bathroom, it is a slurry and they're gaseous. So you get a lot of splatter. And so no matter how clean you try to keep a dairy operation, there's always remnants of manure somewhere. So just keep that in mind. Little trivia, unpasteurized dairy products are consumed by a small percentage, yet they account for 96% of illnesses and 84% of hospitalizations contaminated from dairy products. Most recently, we've had some kids on the West Coast sickened by E. coli with STEC and now having hemolytic uremic syndrome from eating a raw cheese that was contaminated. So just be aware, there's a reason why public health takes milk seriously. In 2015, things started changing and we started going down a slippery slope, but we've come out of it. We have rules in place. But just a short story. In 2015, A work group was created. Requirements were proposed that a raw milk dairy farm would be based off of the same standards as a commercial grade A dairy farm with increased frequency of inspections and pathogen testing. Raw milk advocates and promoters, they were not happy. It's too expensive. Their business model is different, whatever. Ultimately, we had rules put in place that was created by our administration at the time. And I'm going to go over those. But first, I just want you to take in consideration on the left side is the cover of the pasteurized milk ordinance, which covers grade A dairy farms and all processing of that milk. It's a total of 465 pages. Our raw milk rules found in Illinois Compiled Statute 775-55 totals 8 pages. So there are differences. Effective July 1st, 2016, raw milk sales became legal in Illinois. The requirement is that the milk can only be sold on the farm it is produced and to the end user. It cannot be delivered. It cannot be picked up and taken back in wholesale bunches for other groups. So more specifically, it can only be for personal use. It has to be picked up. It cannot be picked up for local distribution. It cannot be sold in a retail establishment or used as an ingredient. It cannot be brought or sold at farmers markets, even if you have a distribution agreement or a herd share. In Illinois, people want to sell it as pet food to skirt the regulations, but pet food is regulated by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. You're going to have to pasteurize it. And last but not least, it cannot be used in retail or cottage food products. And we've had many inquiries over the years. Well, I want to make goat milk cheese. You can't do it. You cannot use your own product. You have to use commercially pasteurized. And I'll let Derek jump on that if it's found. Requirements for the raw milk farms, it's pretty short and simple. They have to have a distribution point on the farm or the premises. This is just a place where it's accessible. The milk will be stored. It's where the consumers pick it up. They'll have to have written sales procedures, consumer advisory and signage. They have to have specific labels. Then we look at physical things like the animal health, the equipment construction and storage, milking practices. What's the milking environment look like? Are they retaining raw samples for traceback if something goes wrong? And here's just a sample of a routine raw milk dairy farm inspection. It covers what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 sections. And most of these are exactly as what is written on this page. There is not much interpretation or deviance from it. Next one, specific signage and documents. We have a lot of the program is administrative in the sense that it does come back to these documents. They have to have a written recall procedure. They have to have their product labels approved or the receipts they use. They have to have a consumer awareness handout created by IDPH available for anybody purchasing milk and presented on their first sales. They need sales and transaction logs of who they're selling this to, and it has a very specific reason. We need a log of the total gallons of milk sold. And last but not least, there's a huge warning sign that has to be posted at the point of sale. And there's no way you can walk past this without seeing it. As far as a recall procedure goes, We actually spoon feed them and give them sample documents of things. They just need to fill in the blanks and change a few. Uh, but we have to identify the concern. And in this instance, it could be a chemical contamination like drug residue. It could be foodborne illness related. It could be temperature abuse. It could be any number of things, but they just need to identify that when they have an issue, who are they going to contact? Documenting how they'll put the product on hold and stop sales, use their transaction log to create a notification list. Then they are required to notify their customers and consumers. And we continue on. Labeling of the container, the package or the receipt has to have the dairy farm's name, address, and permit number. The words not pasteurized or unpasteurized have to be on the label, in addition to the words raw milk. Milk produced has to be sold within 5 days, and you need to specify what species. Generally, it's assumed it's cow, but we have a lot of people that also do goat milk. And the label or the receipt has to include the same warning statement and instructions to notify public health if there's a complaint or illness. And this could be an example of a product receipt blank that we provide. Consumer awareness handout. This is kind of a public health making its opinion. But we have several questions. And it's to make the consumer ask questions, be more conscious and involved in their decisions. It's a personal choice. But the first one is the producer listed on the IDPH website and have a valid license for selling raw milk? If they're not, you should really be asking the question is why do they not want to be legit? And you should probably look elsewhere. When you go in, this is like a retail establishment or something else. You walk in, look at the area where they're selling the milk and storing equipment and milking the cows. Does it look really nice? If the things that you can see do not look great from the consumer side, what do the things you don't see look like? Do the animals look clean and healthy? A proper dairy cow should be a very clean animal. Yeah, some of them waller, but you clean them. One thing we do in dairy that's different than most food, we always sanitize our equipment just prior to milking. We don't wash, rinse, and sanitize and air dry. We wash, but right before use, we sanitize. An important question, how do you rapidly cool milk in a commercial or a home style refrigerator? Do they have a bulk tank used for rapid cooling of milk? We have the same standards. They have to go from the body temperature of that animal to less than 45 degrees in 4 hours. Take into consideration, an average Holstein is going to produce about 11 gallons of milk a day, or 10. How many of you have capacity to cool 10 gallons of milk real fast in a home refrigerator? So that's an important question. Where does the farm store the supplies, the containers that they put the milk in? Is it in a clean environment? Are they sealed and packaged and kept that way until filled? And one of my favorites is the producer willing to share their laboratory quality records that they have to provide IDPH. If they don't want to share them, I would be curious and I would look elsewhere. Another one, just an example of what a sales or transaction log looks like. We need the date of the sale, information about the milk, the consumer, and we need some form of traceability with a legitimate phone number or a legitimate street address. We run into issues when we come in and we see 111, 111, 1111. That is not a legitimate number. My favorite, I've seen 815-8675309. If you're over 50, you know those numbers. Next, they have to have, like I said, the sales log has to have information and it has to be filled out completely. You cannot come in and purchase milk as the Mary Jane's Co-op and buy 50 gallons. Fictitious names cause problems for the producer. We need to know the quantities and the date. These records are kept for 6 months, and failure to keep these ledgers could lead to permit suspension. If there is an outbreak or any issues without proper ledgers, IDPH will be forced to name the farm and producer statewide for investigative purposes and outreach. And I'll mention and explain that here in a bit, why it's so significant. The warning placard, the regulation states a 2-inch font, and it must state, warning, milk that is not pasteurized is sold or distributed here. This dairy farm is not inspected routinely by the Illinois Department of Public Health. Raw milk may contain pathogens that cause serious illness, especially in children, the elderly, women who are pregnant, and persons with weakened immune systems. A pretty standard warning sign. But what does it look like? That is an example on the door of a commercial reach-in, walk-in cooler. It's pretty obvious. You cannot not see the sign. They also have to keep a 6-ounce sample to be retained for a minimum of 14 days. That way, if there's issues, we have control samples to go back to, and we can look and we can test those and use it for investigative purposes. The raw milk farm inspection standards, we're looking, do the animals appear healthy and clean? Is the equipment properly constructed, and is it properly stored? We look at the milking practices. How do they milk? Are they using a traditional milking parlor? Are they using a bucket milker? We even have people hand milking animals in the raw program. The milking environment, where do you milk them? What's around them? What can affect it? And the one scientific control we have is they provide monthly quality counts of the milk they produce. And we're looking for general plate count as an overall indicator. We look at something called somatic cells, which are leukocytes in the cow, basically an indicator of the animal's health and any infection that may be in the udder. We look for any traces of antibiotics, and our testing could detect 1 drop of penicillin in an over-the-road tanker with 60,000 pounds of milk in it. We also do a coliform count for overall protection. And if you have coliforms, it's indicating that there's environmental contamination taking place. So we monitor some of those things. The animal health and cleanliness, you're looking for animals showing abnormalities, that they're milked last or separate. That milk cannot be sold. Abnormalities could be pinkish tinge or blood in the milk, colostrum, any stringiness, lumpy cottage cheese-like stuff that indicates mastitis is occurring. Is clean bedding provided? You cannot have the cows wallowing in filth and manure. Are the areas where the cows have access to, are they graded to drain so that there's no standing and splashing water? Is the manure scraped and removed? And one thing that people do not like, but you have to segregate your dairy cows from swine and fowl. They cannot be housed together, no matter what your free range practices and thoughts are, because swines and fowl, they carry a lot of diseases that can be transmitted and carried through milk. So we want to keep those away. Equipment construction, we use multi-use equipment. It just needs to be made of a smooth, non-absorbent, corrosion-resistant, food-grade material. And it's not uncommon to ask for documentation to prove that, is this really a food-grade item? Good example, not all plastic is food-grade. When I used to teach, I used to always like to ask people, have you ever drank water from a green garden hose? We all have. It has a very unique flavor and smell. Have you ever drank water from that white garden hose with the blue stripe? It's food grade. It doesn't take on these smells. So not everything is food grade. If it's stainless steel, we're looking for an AISI of 300 or higher, which is showing a higher nickel content and more resistance to corrosion. If it's metal, it has to be a non-toxic metal, so galvanized, for instance, no lead welding or seams. Heat-resistant glass is still a common item, like Pyrex. Plastic and rubbers, they just have to be inert. If you move the milk in milk cans, like pictured on the left, it has to be what we call umbrella lidded. And the whole purpose of this is when you're moving it through the barn to the area you're going to bottle, or you've got to carry it across the yard in inclement weather or anything. This is keeping the milk protected. Anything that lands on the top, it's designed so that it rolls off, cannot be pulled back in to the milk. Milking practices. First thing, to get good, clean milk, you have to have clean cows to start. And so what we typically do is we sanitize the teat with iodine. It's dried by hand with a towel. And then they practice something called force stripping, where you grab the teat and you pull and you milk out just a few squirts of milk. And what you're doing is you're flushing out and you're cooling quickly. Or you're flushing out the teat and cleaning it out so that anything that might have gotten right there at the very entrance when she was resting or laying down gets flushed away. Milking equipment, we always sanitize right before use, not after use, because things can become recontaminated in the environment. Operators need to be able to wash and dry their hands. Milk has to be cooled rapidly. Hand milking is allowed, but wet hand milking is strictly prohibited because of risk of transmission of staphylococcus and other things from humans. And wet hand milking is an old method where you dipped your hand into the bucket with some of the milk and you use the butter fat as a lubricant to more gently milk the animal. Milking environment. This is pretty simple. The milking area needs to have overhead protection along with easily cleanable floors and walls. It does not have to be big. It does not have to be beautiful, but it does have to have overhead protection and sidewalls. The area needs to be clean prior to milking and after milking. Milking equipment needs to be washed and sanitized with potable water. All equipment can be stored in an enclosed room with smooth and easily cleanable floors and ceilings and walls. If that's not doable, they can get a storage cabinet or a large Rubbermaid tote or something that they can store the equipment in. Unfortunately, the way the rules are written, you are allowed to do the washing of the equipment and things within the residence. Next one, quality counts I mentioned. We look for coliforms, maximum of 10 per mil, bacteria less than 20,000, and that somatic cell indicating herd health, 750,000 per mils. Goats, they go up to 1 million, but that's because this indicator test does not mean the same thing in a goat as it does in bovine. And one thing I like to remind people of, a raw milk permit does not absolve the producer of any liability. Uh, and it's difficult to get insurance for this product. But if a child gets sick enough and they develop HUS, the parents are going to go through their resources incredibly quickly. Um, and then they're going to have to go and find more resources to support their family. So this does not make you immune. It's only giving you a pathway to legally do this in Illinois, but you still are taking on the risk. Um, Now, I just wanted to throw this out because we had our first major raw outbreak last spring or last fall, and we learned a lot from it. And it was a big problem for a while and involved a lot of resources from the state. But basically, on October 30th last fall, we received a phone call from a local health department where 2 households had Campylobacter. They were not feeling well, and they did indicate that they had purchased raw milk. On October 31st, we identified another household. So now we're up to 5 cases, individuals in 3 separate households, all saying they purchased milk from the same place. Campylobacter is kind of a iffy thing with it being the number one food poisoning or foodborne illness in the US, and rather similar symptoms to salmonella and other minor illnesses, but this one took a turn. We first went to the farm on 11/4 of 25. There were no ill employees. There were no cows showing signs of spontaneous abortion or illness. We only identified 3 violations in the operation. The written recall plan was not fully implemented. Their raw milk sales ledgers had a lot of make believe and nonsense on them from consumers not wanting to identify themselves, and they weren't keeping samples of the milk they were selling like they were required to. On the very first day, we thought this was going to be, wow, this is going to be a slam dunk. We will culture Campylobacter from the milk on the farm. We'll culture it from the fecal samples of the ill people. We'll do a PCR, wham bam. We can show that they're the same. It wasn't that easy. Milk is almost impossible to test for Campylobacter, and we quickly learned it. PCR would have been a great test to look, but all it's going to tell us is that there's Campylobacter. It's not going to say it's the one we're looking for. It cannot differentiate, is it a live cell or a dead cell? And it is not, like I said, it's hard to get from milk or to determine it. IDPH labs, we weren't certified at the time to do this type of test. We are now. So we had to go out and shop and ask for help from neighboring states to run this. Problem with this Campylobacter is it's a aerophile. It cannot survive in an aerobic environment, but it doesn't survive in a fully anaerobic. It needs minor oxygen amounts. So if you shake a bottle of milk with any airspace, you could make it harder to locate the source. Also, people don't think of it, but milk is acidic. It has a pH of 6.4 to 6.8, whereas the normal pH across the bodies of mammals is around 7.4. So we have a brilliant research microbiologist, Dr. Geltz, and he combed the literature and put together, and he came up with a process that allowed us to collect the samples with minimal oxygenation, but we also had to adjust the pH very precisely before packaging and shipping. The best part, though, was Dr. Geltz's technique worked. Out of 6 initial samples collected, we found Campylobacter jejuni in every sample. or the Minnesota Department of Ag and Health, their laboratory did the work for us and they were certified to perform it, but they had warned us up front they had never been able to actually culture Campylobacter from milk. So this was a big win for them too. They were able to do it. Next, farm actions. What did this producer do? They were notified of the positive samples. We immediately suspended the permit because we know there's Campylobacter in the milk. The producer, with a little arm twisting, they updated their website, social media accounts. They notified customers that they could, and they got the word out. Uh, for the milk to come back in and to sell, they would have to have 3 negative test results in a row with separate milkings using cleaned and sanitized equipment between each one. And that was done, but it wasn't easy to get there. The farm ended up doing a consultation with their large animal vet and had herd checks to identify any illnesses in cows, updates on vaccinations, whatever. Grand total, they individually tested 220 cows and samples to isolate and find the cows that did have Campylobacter in them that they were shedding. For this, they used a simple Neogen molecular detection. It's basically a easy countertop PCR technique. It was a lab in Peoria was able to accomplish and do for them. They identified 6 cows, removed them from the herd. Then they tested their tank 3 more times before they told us we're ready. And we came in. They also had a full evaluation of the milking system and equipment, including vacuum lines. Worked in retraining staff on proper teat prep before milking and making sure everything is clean. By this point, we had done whole genome sequencing, and we had a perfect match between the patients and what was found on the farm. So it was kind of a big find for IDPH because this took work from infectious disease, laboratories, the director's medical team. Who else did we have? Epidemiology. Shayna Altman was amazing in her work and what she discovered. Little bit of a final number. And I saw something in the news last week about raw milk, and they talked about this outbreak, and they were not even close to being accurate. 11 people were minorly ill. No, we had 66 people ill from this outbreak. 24 of these cases experienced bloody diarrhea. I mentioned earlier, there is no distribution, no co-op sales allowed. The consumer needs to come in. We discovered somebody in Chicago coming down once or twice a week, buying anywhere from 40 to 60 gallons of milk at a time. Nobody can consume that much before it spoils. But we had patients in Champaign, Chicago, DeWitt, Ford County, Kankakee, LaSalle, Livingston, McLean, Putnam, Sangamon, Will, Woodford. Stevenson is in southern Illinois. It's 150 miles or more from where this milk was produced. Average range of age was 101 to 75 years old. I have an inaccuracy on numbers. I need to change that last one to 24. We had no hospitalizations reported, but 10 people were ill enough they ended up in the emergency rooms. And everything was purchased between October 10th and November 19th. Once raw milk sales were stopped until this was resolved, we did not have further continuation of this outbreak. And what it really comes down to is IDPH had a great team, worked with local health departments, but we also had a producer that was cooperative and worked with us. And we're concerned that they were causing illnesses and they really just wanted to make sure their product was safe. And this wasn't going to be a problem further. So that's all I had.
Very good, Guy. Thank you so much. That was very, very good. So do we have any questions at all for Guy?
I think there was a question in the chat about camel milk.
I didn't see it.
Yes, so that's right. Thanks, Lori. So camel milk, would this fall under the same requirements?
Yes. Basically, these requirements would cover any mammal that is milked. With, I'm going to throw out one exception, don't laugh, breast milk. That's a
Okay.
whole different deal with the FDA. But no, camel milk would fall under that. Unfortunately, we don't have any camel dairies in Illinois or anyone milking them yet. I do know of a farm in Missouri that milks camels and then pasteurizes and ships it into the Chicago area.
Very good. Okay. I didn't even know that you can milk a camel. So there we go. You learn something every day. All right. We've got another question too. So Ken, what about aged cheese that's made with raw milk? Can that be sold at a farmer's market?
Yes, if dairy products sold at a farmer's market, they need to be able to provide you a copy of their license. I
Okay.
will not grant a dairy plant license to a place that cannot meet the requirements as written and they're not flexible to go beyond. So a raw milk cheese does not come from a raw milk farm. It comes from a commercial dairy operation, and it might not be pasteurized, but you have a few different factors going on in it. One, they have to be semi-hard or hard cheeses. So you cannot make brie or Gouda. Soft, um, mild cheeses. They have to be aged for a minimum of 60 days. And what's going on here is you've got a high salt concentration. You're removing moisture. You have inhibition going on from the bacteria used to culture and give specific flavors. The research has shown that a properly made and aged raw cheese without cross contamination is safe to eat. The FDA has done research in the last 20 years, and they have shown that it can be reactivated in the lab, but there's no documentation that it's ever occurred in nature. And some of your best cheeses are often raw milk cheeses when you get into something like a good Parmesan Reggiano or a Pecorino cheese. But they do have to be hard, they have to be aged. And if they're produced in Illinois, my inspectors are looking for this and checking on records when they do routine inspections. How are they aging it? How do they document, segregate so that they're not confusing and shorting something? But yes, it is legal.
Great. Thank you.
Oh,
It looks like there's a comment in the chat box as well. I've seen camel milk at a local store. I believe it was shipped from overseas. How are overseas egg and milk products like the camel milk regulated?
wow. I cannot touch on the topic of eggs, but I would be curious, Hiron, was the milk canned or refrigerated? Ah, it
Bottled.
was in bottles. That is a curious one because to sell that in the US, they have to be on an approved list from the FDA. And I'm not sure there's any Middle Eastern countries. There's a couple European countries, Canada and Mexico, that ship grade A into the US. I'm not aware of anything from overseas. If it had been put in a can and retort processed, it would be a whole different situation. Nope. It also has to have an English label in this country. If you see it, let us know. We'll reach out. I've got some people up there that would love to find the distributor and work with them.
And where can they reach you, Guy? Just right there, your
I'm going to
contact?
give my personal email in the box right now.
Okay, perfect.
I have two, but this is the only one I can access off a work phone anytime.
Okay. Are there any more questions for Guy? I don't see any more in the chat box unless I missed anything.
Hey, I used up all that spare time.
You sure did. Great
I
job.
warned you.
Hey, that's all right. All right.
Thank you for having
Well,
me.
absolutely. Thank you so, so much. We will go ahead and transition to the next presentation, which I believe is myself. So I will try to pull up my slides here and we'll be talking a little bit about cottage food. Obviously, if you need to take a break or anything like that, please feel free to do so. We know it's kind of a long time to sit here, but hopefully you've been enjoying some of these presentations and getting a lot out of them. All right, Guy, I think I can share my screen as soon as you unshare yours.
Sorry about that. I
That's all
thought when I
right.
closed my window on my end, it would do it on yours. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, what are you seeing? Are you seeing my notes or are you seeing the full screen?
We're
Full
seeing your
screen.
notes.
You are. I thought so. Okay, let me switch that. How's that? Better?
Better.
Ah, perfect. Okay, well, thank you. Now I'm not able to see the chat box, but I'm sure my friends will let me know if there's anything in there that I need to know. All right, so yeah, we're gonna just switch gears now. I'm gonna talk about cottage food at the market. So again, my name is Jenna Smith. I'm a food nutrition educator with University of Illinois Extension. I'm always excited to talk about cottage food. My kids do not allow me to come home from the market without buying some type of sweet treat. So I really love just all the diversity of food that, cottage food brings to the market. So we're going to just kind of talk about what cottage food is, why farmers markets can really be great places to sell, and what producers really just need to know to operate both legally and safely in Illinois. So, all right, maybe you have like a really amazing hot sauce recipe, or maybe you make a really delicious macaroon and someone has told you you should sell that. You know, Prior to the Illinois cottage food law, it really would be a lot harder said than done. You would have to have a commercial kitchen, which is quite expensive to build or even to rent. But with the cottage food law, it's a lot easier and economical to start your own small business because these foods are produced in your home kitchen or a kitchen on your farm. And you may produce really any food or drink other than what's on the prohibited list. And we will get to that list here in just a moment. Cottage food must be direct sale to the consumer, such as you selling at the farmer's market. So that means you can't sell it at a restaurant or retail shop or grocery store for them to sell it. So that would be considered wholesale and would no longer be cottage food. The big question is what foods and foods and drinks can I sell under the Illinois cottage food law? And really the short answer to that is anything as long as it's not on the prohibited list. So that might be non-potentially hazardous baked goods like your cakes and cookies and breads. It could be jams, jellies, and syrups. Some of your acidified or fermented products are also allowed, like hot sauce, salsa, pickles, kimchi, those sorts of things, and so much more. The cottage food law lists 14 categories of prohibited foods. So this means that you cannot sell what's on the list here. So you can't sell meat, poultry, fish, seafood, or shellfish, and this does include any ingredients with these items. So for instance, some kind of a product that's made with fish sauce would not be allowed. No dairy, except as an ingredient in a non-potentially hazardous baked good or candy, such as caramel, or as an ingredient in like a baked good frosting, so like a buttercream. And really the large amounts of powdered sugar that's added in buttercream icing, it creates a stable product, but it has to be made without any raw eggs. You can use meringue powder because that's going to have your dried egg whites in it. And it cannot have any cream fillings. You cannot use eggs except for if it's an ingredient in some non-potentially hazardous food that does include also dry noodles, or as an ingredient in a baked good frosting like buttercream, but again, those eggs cannot be raw. No pumpkin pies, no sweet potato pies, cheesecakes, custard pies, cream pies, and pastries with any potentially hazardous fillings or toppings. And no garlic and oil, except if that garlic oil is acidified, such as a salad dressing where you're putting a lot of vinegar or acid in it. All right, here's the rest of the list. No low acid canned foods like canned green beans or canned corn, for example. No sprouts, no cut leafy greens, except for those that are dehydrated, acidified, or blanched and frozen. So the harvest cut doesn't count here. It would just be like, if you're trying to sell some type of a chopped salad, that would not be allowed. No cut or pureed fresh tomato or melon, no dehydrated tomato or melon, and no frozen cut melon. No wild harvested non-cultivated mushrooms, alcoholic beverages, or kombucha. So these are the foods that are just, they're too high risk. They're not allowed for those safety reasons. You are allowed, however, to sell homemade drink. However, as we just mentioned, we said no alcohol, no kombucha, but you also cannot serve the drinks concession style. So, that's when it's made to order, where you're pouring it, at the market. It's not that you can't sell it, but it's just not considered cottage food. You would require a different permit by the local health department in the county that you are selling to be able to do that. So what is allowed under cottage food is drinks that are packaged in sealed containers in the home kitchen. It will need to have that proper label affixed to that, and we'll get to the labels here in a little bit. And the packaged drink has to be stored, transported, and sold at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Now, if you are fresh pressing juice and it's unpasteurized, you must include a warning label, and it may be subject to state and federal regulations. If you're canning acidic juices, you must process them in a boiling water bath canner. Tomato juice, if you're selling tomato juice, it must be properly acidified, which I'll get to those regulations too in a moment. But home canned acidic fruit juices can be sold without refrigeration. All right, can I sell baked goods with cheese? Well, you can't sell cheesecake as that's on the prohibited list, but you might be able to sell items such as jalapeno cheddar sourdough or Asiago bagels. However, the local health department may require a commercial lab test that shows a water activity level of 0.85 or lower. And this is because, the safety and shelf stability can really depend on the type of cheese that's used and the baking process. So soft cheeses like brie and cheeses with high moisture like cream cheese, they have a higher water activity level than those hard and aged cheeses like the aged Parmesan or aged cheddar. So, what about time temperature control for safety or TCS foods? So, these are foods that require both time and temperature management to prevent unsafe bacterial growth. As long as the TCS food isn't on the prohibited list, you may sell it refrigerated or frozen. So, for example, you can sell zucchini noodles or vegan soups as long as they are stored, transported, and sold at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Or you can sell maybe frozen sweet potato fries or vegan ice cream as long as they are stored, transported, and sold at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. If you don't have mechanical refrigeration, then you'll need an insulated, hard-sided, cleanable container. So some kind of hard cooler with plenty of ice packs or ice. If you don't have a portable freezer, you're going to need to use dry ice if you're going to try to keep those foods frozen. Of course, try to limit the amount of times that you open the lid to the cooler, and be sure to bring a food thermometer so that you can measure that temperature. So because tomatoes are on the borderline of being a low acid food, you do have to acidify them to ensure their safety. In order to sell canned tomatoes or a canned tomato product like salsa or pasta sauce, you must either, first of all, follow exactly a USDA or cooperative extension recipe, because these recipes have been lab tested for safety. So these are the recipes that are actually from the National Center for Home Food Preservation. So if you just type that into your search engine, that's going to pull up the website. And the National Center for Home Food Preservation, it has like a long list of recipes, as well as just a safe preservation instruction procedures there. So that's where you definitely would want to go to get those recipes. The other option then is to use your own recipe and send your product to a commercial lab for testing to make sure that the pH is 4.6 or lower. There are hundreds of varieties of tomatoes. They all have varying levels of pH. So you do have to always use the exact variety and proportion when you're making that product. If it is at all different, you must submit that product for separate testing as well. And you need to submit a new pH test every year. Okay, so in order to sell any acidified foods like pickled vegetables and relishes or salad dressings where you're adding acid to bring down the pH to a safe 4.6 or below level, or fermented foods like, sauerkraut or kimchi where the pH is lowered naturally, you have to either, again, follow exactly a USDA or cooperative extension recipe, which, as we mentioned, that's found at the National Center for Home Food Preservation website. Or you may use your own recipe, but you must submit a food safety plan every year, which the form is part of the local health department's registration. So you don't have to make this up yourself. They'll have that form for you to just fill out. And you must submit a pH test from a commercial lab every 3 years. You only have to submit a food safety plan and a pH test for each category of product that uses the same procedure. So that means if you make, let's say, pickled beets and pickled green beans, you only have to submit one pH test for one product because the procedure is the same. But if you did, let's say, pickled beets and fermented beets, you would need two separate pH tests because they involve two different procedures. And you would need to then can your product in a boiling water bath canner, or you would need to sell that product refrigerated. Okay, so we've gone through, I know a lot of information as well, so a little brain break. Let me know in the chat box, what cottage food product are you planning to sell this year? If you're planning to sell any cottage food, type that in the chat box. I'd love to see what you got going on. Or if you're a health department and you're approving some cottage food products, what's some of the things that you've been approving and what are some things that you've been seeing? All right, I'm going to need my friends to let me know too. What's in the chat box? What do we got? What's coming in?
Baked goods. Someone
Mhm.
selling sourdough and sourdough products. So
Sourdough
much
is really
sourdough.
big. Yes, sourdough is huge right now. I love it. I love it.
Jellies and jams, flour jelly.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Baked goods, fermented foods, juices, sugar cookies, French butter cookies, honey marshmallows.
Wow. Honey marshmallows. Yeah, that's a different one. That sounds good. I'm sure sounds like my kids would love all of these. So this sounds
Would
great.
shelf-stable cheese be able to be used in a baked good under cottage food?
Okay. Shelf-stable cheese in a baked good. Yeah, if it's that shelf-stable cheese, that should be okay. Some of my IDPH friends or health department friends might have more on that, but yeah, shelf-stable.
It would be if the final baked good was non-TCS, then it would meet the exemption for dairy. Oh, I see. You're missing a great picture of pies you'll have to check out.
Oh, definitely. Okay.
And then garlic roasted. Can we use garlic roasted in oil in baked breads?
Garlic roasted in oil in baked breads. Yes, right. Because yeah, you're baking that, so that should be okay as well. Yep.
Yeah, what garlic and oil is only for if it's fresh garlic and it hasn't been acidified. So if you're baking it into the bread, there should be no problem.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Well, great. All right. Well, we'll keep moving on. So this is just an example of a product label with all the labeling requirements. So somewhere on the label, you do need to have the following phrase in prominent lettering. So this product was produced in a home kitchen, not inspected by a health department that may also process common food allergens. If you have safety concerns, contact your local health department. So that has to be somewhere on that label. And then you need to list the common name of the product. So in this case here, it's chocolate chip cookie. You must list all the ingredients of the food product, including any color, artificial flavor, and preservative, and it must be listed in descendant order by predominance of weight. If you used, let's say, like for example, of this chocolate chip cookie, it looks like, store-bought chocolate chips. So you would still need to list all the ingredients in those chocolate chips on your label. You'll need to have allergen labeling as specified under the federal labeling requirements. So you'll need to know the 9 most common food allergens. And if your product has any of these allergens, you'll need to list it with the common name in the ingredients. So such as butter, and then in parentheses, you would list the ingredients in the butter, which includes milk, and milk is a common allergen. And you can then put, contains milk below the ingredients. And so this label here has both of those. You'll need the name of the cottage food operation, such as, looks like we've got Bev's Bakery, the date the product was processed or prepared, and then the identifying registration number, which will be provided by the local health department on your certificate of registration, and then the name of the county in which the registration was filed. So if you're looking to get started in cottage food, you need to take that ANSI approved certified food protection manager's course and pass that exam. That certificate is good for 5 years. And there are many different providers that offer this course. I teach this course with the University of Illinois Extension. I was actually out teaching it the past 2 days. But you can also take the course and exam online. There are many companies that also offer it online. So if you need that and you're trying to find a course, just feel free to contact me and I will be happy to try to help you locate one. And then you'll register with the local health department in the county which you reside. So they will have an application to fill out where you're going to list what foods, what products you plan to sell. You'll provide provide either a pH sample or a written food safety plan if you need to do that, and pay a fee. Although some counties don't charge, but that fee is otherwise capped at $50. And you do need to make sure you're renewing your application each year. As a cottage food vendor, you may sell your product at different Illinois fairs, festivals, pop-up events, out of your own home or even online, as long as it's shipped within Illinois. But there are also really some advantages to selling at a farmer's market. Farmers markets have built-in foot traffic and a ready-made audience that you can tap into. And the market's a great way to get your name out there for people to recognize, especially if you're new and you're just trying to get started. And you really get that good just face-to-face customer connection where people can see your products, and it gives you the opportunity to educate them on the quality ingredients and processes used.
Right lane to turn
But
right on
selling,
toward I-670 East.
what?
Told me to
Okay, but selling at the farmer's market is also a great networking opportunity, because you've got other vendors, local businesses, and community organizations, which might open the doors for just other opportunities. So lots of great things. And I have no idea why my slides have all of a sudden some marks on them. I don't know if you're seeing that as I am, but it's okay. Looks like my child just colored all over it. So anyways, cottage food resources, we have lots to share here. So we have a lot of resources for you. Here at Extension, we have developed a cottage food website, which kind of just breaks down some of the requirements of the law. But what I really love too is on this website, you can take the cottage food operator training course. This isn't something that's required, but it is just a really good, it's self-paced, it's all online. And it really just helps to get you familiar with the law. And it goes over some of those key food safety aspects of selling your products. So it's kind of hands-on. And so it's a great place to start if you're just kind of getting started in cottage food. You also will find the cottage food guide on this website as well. So this is, it's in the process actually of getting updated. So we hope to have the new one up probably in just a few more weeks. You can also check out the IDPH website. They have a really nice labeling checklist to make sure you got everything on your label as you should. There's also the Illinois Farmers Market Food Safety Guide if you're selling at the market. And if you want to check out just like what other cottage food producers are doing across the state, you can
use
also
either
check
lane to
out
turn left on
the
West Plum
Illinois
Street.
Cottage Food Entrepreneurs Facebook group. So that's out there as well and can be just a fun way to tap in to see what others are doing and what other questions they might have. All right, so I think that's all I have for you. But yeah, if you've got any questions, I will stop sharing and happy to try to answer those.
There's a
Oh,
question
and now
in
I'm
the
seeing the
chat.
picture of that pie. It's looking good. Okay, yes, sorry, what do you have?
There was a question in the chat about using alcohol like wine and champagne and jelly.
Oh, okay. So alcohol like wine and champagne, can those be used in jelly? Yeah, what the IDPH here, I'm gonna have you kind of help answer to this as well. I know that there's a certain amount that is okay when it comes to things like, vanilla extract and, things that are gonna have some alcohol in it. What about in jellies?
The regulation does provide an exception for using alcohol in cottage food, but it expressly says extracts and baked goods. And then for baked goods, I can't recall the percentage off the top of my head, but there is a percentage that it has to be under to be considered unadulterated.
Okay, let's see. I'm
My
sorry, I'm trying to
Am I
read.
muted? I was gonna say it went really quiet.
Nope, you're good. I'm reading here. So it looks like selling baked goods using commercial kitchen for veggie wraps. Well, if you're using the commercial kitchen, I know that cottage food is really geared more towards the home kitchen, and so that's where really the products need to be, utilized, made in that home kitchen to be sold under cottage food.
Correct. You
Not sure if
cannot
there's,
use you cannot use your cottage food registration in a commercial kitchen. Any food you make under your cottage food registration has to be within your home or that appropriately equipped farm kitchen. Anything you're doing in a commercial kitchen would have to be permitted separately with the local health department for whatever type of operation you would be.
I think that she was just commenting on what she's making
oh,
from your
okay.
question. So she was saying that she does baked goods, but she also uses a commercial kitchen for veggie wraps.
I see. Okay. Sure. Thank you, Anna. Okay. What about infused butters?
That would be
Butter would be,
dairy.
yep, right.
Um, Dairy is allowed, but only under those two exceptions that Jenna talked about, the non-TCS baked good and the baked good frosting. So otherwise, dairy is not permitted in cottage food products.
Okay. And then I'm working with another person on a market garden on my farm. He also bakes bread. Can he sell his bread on my farm along with the produce that we will be selling on my farm stand? Sell
Cottage
his,
food does allow a vendor to set up on a third-party property with approval from the operator. We recommend that that person be present. So it could be done depending on how your setup is. That's something I would work with the local health department on.
yeah.
Upcoming in the new guide, I think mostly it is some just updates for products we've seen. I think sourdough specifically got brought up, and I don't think there's any major changes. There wasn't
Yeah,
any major law changes. It was mostly fielding questions that we'd received about trending products.
right, right, absolutely. There's a lot of questions that come in, so a lot of the changes are really just kind of more clarity with some of the things that were already in there. And then just answering some of the other kind of questions, like you said, sourdough is kind of a bigger one. So we talk more about that in there and a few other things, but we are going to plan on having kind of an actual um, kind of hopefully a one pager or so that will show you all the new changes in the guide. So you won't have to try to, find every little thing in that original guide. So that'll be nice. Okay, wanted to ask if I can sell elderberry tincture. So yes, elderberry tincture. So with that, the elderberries you do have to be somewhat careful with, in that their pH is kind of close to being that low acid pH range. So with elderberries, as tinctures are allowed. I don't know, Dara, if you have anything else to add to specific tinctures and things like that.
The biggest things we see with both elderberry and products that are advertised as tinctures is typically the reason that you are selling that product or some of the advertising you're doing for that product involves health claims, which are not allowed under cottage food. So typically these products fall more into a dietary supplement realm, which is not the intent of cottage food, it's the intent of conventional food. So if you're intending to sell that, advertise that, market that in any way as having health claims, health benefits, or as being a supplement to the diet, which most of those kind of things are because they're not typically used as like conventional food, then it would not fall under cottage food because things can't have health claims. I see the next question on tomatoes and sampling fresh tomatoes. That's more related to the farmer's market sampler permit or certificate, which we talked about. You can sample produce at a farmer's market, and there's a
Right.
couple of different ways to do that, either with a temporary event or with a farmer's market sampler certificate. And we can have information on that on the IDPH website, but it would be outside of cottage food.
Right. And what is the process for having things tested? So we do also have on our website at Extension, our cottage food website, we do have some, a few testing, labs. Of course, there are many more, but certainly you can give any of those labs a call or any of the other ones that you might see. But basically, calling them. And, generally, if you're going for like a pH test, those tests are usually not too expensive. I mean, they should be around $25 or so for a sample. So giving them a call. And like I said, if you need a list of commercial labs, feel free to head on over to our cottage food website, or there's also some listed, I believe, in the cottage food guide.
Jenna, I also think and maybe IHA, Justin might know, they had a food lab testing a couple years ago, last year maybe, about how the process is done. It was one of the lab managers there. I can't remember which lab it was, but that recording may be available somewhere. Justin.
Yeah, I think, yeah, last year we had somebody, and it would be on IEHA's YouTube channel. I can see if I can locate it. I'll get it to Janie so she can link to it.
Perfect.
Can you comment on honey sales at farmers markets?
Honey sales at farmers markets. Yes. And with honey, it's not going to be cottage food unless it is, flavored of some sort in some way. But yeah, I will let the health department talk about honey otherwise.
Yeah, so as Jenna's saying, typically honey is considered a raw agricultural product as long as it's in its natural form. The only requirement for a farmer's market would that it would be appropriately labeled and have product origin information. We have some information on our farmer's market website about product origin labeling, but otherwise it's not required to have a permit or to have cottage food registration unless you're doing things like I know hot honey and infused honeys are very popular. Those would require either cottage food or commercial kitchen.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, I think we are going to go ahead and transition then to our next speaker. So we've got Dr. Lori George, and she's going to talk to us about some produce.
Yeah, we're going to change gears a little bit, I think. Hopefully. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that.
We can see it. It looks like it's in your kind of note version or slide version.
What is?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to be talking about food safety at your farmer's market as a vendor, right? Because this is a vendor's day. If you haven't joined us for the past 2 days, once all these recordings are up on the ILFMA website, I suggest you kind of go through them. There's really good information in there, knowing what each department, whether it is the regulatory departments or whether the food market managers, and what they're actually looking at and looking for when they come into the market. And that will really help you as a vendor. But today I'm just going to talk a little bit about food safety at the market. This is my name and contact information should you have any questions at all. I'm going to go back a little bit. During World War II, most families had victory gardens, right? And they canned their harvest of fruits and vegetables in order to have that bounty throughout the winter months. In today's farmers markets, not only are local products sold, such as fresh fruits, vegetables, and nuts, but products that are grown vast distances from Illinois, such as Arizona and California, and places beyond. In most markets, value-added products are sold, products that farmers create from their produce, such as jams and jellies, cheese, wine, baked goods, and other things that we've been discussing today. This new market of value-added product really opens the revenue sources for you as a vendor that were previously closed to you in the past. The USDA Agricultural Marketing Services Directory lists 28 categories of food products sold at U.S. farmers markets. 6 of the most common products sold is shown on this table: fresh fruits and vegetables, ready-to-eat prepared foods, eggs, cheese, dairy, meats, poultry, fish, and seafood. Of all the products that are sold at the farmers markets nationwide, the highest percentages are with fresh fruits and vegetables or those ready-to-eat foods. Okay. In Illinois, these percentages are about the same. In Illinois, food safety standards for produce at the farmers markets can be initiated by your local Department of Public Health through the Illinois Cottage Food Act, or if the market itself has indicated specific requirements within the rules and regulations. But what about the raw agricultural products that's sold at the marketplace? Items that are most eaten raw, such as the tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and lettuce. What about those fruits such as strawberries, blueberries, apples, and peaches, just to name a few of them? In Illinois, no one organization regulates fresh produce. There are no specific state-implemented laws on how growers grow and harvest their produce before selling to the consumers at the market. So today I'm going to change tactic a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, Produce Safety Rule. Some of you as vendors may have already heard about it. If you haven't, this is just going to be a little touch up on what it is. But basically, the Food Safety Modernization Act was signed into law on January 4th of 2011 by President Obama. It is the most sweeping reform of the United States food safety laws in over 70 years. The overall objective of FSMA is to focus on prevention of food safety issues. So it is the first ever federal standard for growing, harvesting, packing, and holding. Now, you as a vendor may be eligible for an exemption or an exclusion based on several things. Number one, what type of commodities are you growing? If you're growing things that are rarely consumed raw, like winter squash, pumpkin, potatoes, cranberries, sour cherries, things that people really don't eat raw, then you can be exempt or excluded from this law. If you do processing activities that include a kill step. Now, a kill step is, we've talked about this briefly, where you're having a heat source that is going to reduce the amount of microorganisms within the product itself through that kill step, that heat step. If you do have a kill step associated with it and it is high enough and long enough to be able to kill those microorganisms, you could be exempt or excluded from the FSMA produce safety rule. If your average annual produce sales over a 3-year period is less than $33,297, you can be exempt or excluded based on this. The majority of growers at the farmers market never really exceed that $33,000 level. But there are other things that can go into it as well, but this is just a generalization as far as where you sit, as far as your sales over 3 years. And you could be exempt or excluded based on the average annual food sales and sales to qualified end users. Meaning if you sell your produce to a qualified end user, like you're selling to a consumer at the farmer's market, they are the ones who's going to be consuming it, right? You're selling it to a restaurant. They are the ones that's going to be using it in the dish and selling it to the consumer. Those are qualified end users, okay? If you're selling to a wholesaler, who in turn is going to repackage and send it further down the line, that is not a qualified end user. So the definition of that qualified end user is going to be important when you determine whether you're going to be covered under the produce safety rule or not. So that's going to be important as you go that. You know, all growers should understand and take action, even if you are under those sales, the $33,000 sale, even if you're under that, you should understand what's happening and take action to reduce those food safety risks on the farm. It's nothing worse than having something at the market and someone gets sick from it because of what you're doing on the farm itself. So how do you know if you're going to be covered by the FSMA produce safety rule? FDA has a nice little flow sheet here that you can go ahead and download and read through. This is a yes or no type thing. Do you harvest, grow, harvest, or hold produce? Yes, no. You go through all those colored boxes, the red, the grays, the blues, and by the time you get to the bottom, then you can figure out that you are covered by this rule based on those individual items that are each of those boxes. Okay, so all these resources that I'm going to be talking about, such as this one and others, will be on the ILFMA website under a resource sheet that I've developed for you. So you don't have to worry about taking this information down now. It should be available to you. But this is the first thing that you should look at if you are not sure whether you're covered under the FSMA produce safety rule. So why is it important? Well, first off, there have been outbreaks associated with produce. This associated foodborne illness outbreaks are commodities between 2010 and 2024. So this is the most recent that we have on this. This graph highlights the diversity of produce items that have been implicated in foodborne illness outbreaks where the source of the outbreak occurred prior to retail or consumer preparation, meaning basically between the production fields and reaching the final consumer. Okay? It does not contain information on outbreaks or illnesses where the contamination is at the retail setting or the home, and it does not include illnesses transmitted person to person. And as you can see, the largest percentages of these outbreaks are on leafy greens, sprouts, melons, cucumbers, tomatoes, all these things that we eat raw, that we don't process before we eat them, okay? So ultimately, contamination can happen to any produce commodity, and therefore preventing contamination is really going to be critical for all fruit and vegetable growers. And for this reason, the produce safety rule does not target specific commodities, but instead it focuses on the practices which reduce the risks. And another reason why you as a vendor should be concerned with outbreaks. You know, when I discuss the FSMA produce safety rule to growers, the first thing that they mention is the fact that they feel the majority of food-related illnesses do not come from smaller growers who sell at farmers markets, or the fact that they don't see a need for these changes. And the one comment that comes up all the time during discussions is, quote, I have been growing and selling produce for the past 20 years and have never made anybody sick, unquote. Unfortunately, I can't say that this is the case for all growers that sell direct to consumers. There have been several farmers market related foodborne illness outbreaks. For instance, illnesses were reported in 2000 with cantaloupe samples sold in Colorado. In 2008, a farmer's market customer consumed contaminated bagged peas sold at an Alaskan farmer's market. Following this, in 2010, fresh guacamole and salsa sold at a farmer's market in Iowa was possibly contaminated with salmonella, leading to several hospitalizations. A produce-related outbreak at an Oregon farmer's market in 2011 was traced to strawberries contaminated with E. coli, which was then traced back to wild animals entering the production fields. In 2017, 7 people confirmed with salmonella poisoning linked to fresh shelled peas from a farmer's market in Wisconsin. Of all these that are listed, there were 176 cases of illness due to E. coli or Campylobacter, which are both bacterial infections in nature, generally found in animal feces. So there are reasons to be concerned as a vendor when you're selling your produce. So the one thing you need to keep in mind as a vendor is that the majority of food safety responsibility will fall on you as the grower. And it's going to be important for you to understand how this contamination can be spread. So let's take a look at these pictures. In the picture on the left, how many times have you had a customer come up to your booth, pick up a tomato or peach or any other product, squeeze it, smell it, and then put it back on the table and walk away, right? What about the picture on the right? Animals at the market are common, but vendors should be aware that animals can reach tabletops. If they can reach them, they can also spread contamination with saliva or dirt. I like the picture on the right because that lady's in the background kind of giving a little snarl there, trying to figure out whether she wants to buy those eggs now. But if you have boxes of food near the ground, the animals can also contaminate by lifting their leg on the product or brushing against it. One way to combat this problem is to make sure the produce is off the ground or staged higher up so animals can't reach it. If customers are the problem, be proactive. If the customer picks up the produce, squeezes it, sniffs it, let them know that they've just bought it. They might not like it, but it's your produce, right? Or you can move the produce further back on the table, out of reach from the customer. This may not resonate with some people, and they may not like it. But remember, it's your product in your farm name that can be implicated in a foodborne outbreak should someone get sick from your product. So as a market vendor, some things to keep in mind, just general things. You must comply with all local health department regulations and market-specific bylaws. That's one of the reasons I suggested that you would go back in the last couple of days and review some of these recordings that we've made on this, as far as the department regulations and all. Good information. These bylaws and regulations will include, like, the Department of Public Health Farmers Market Food Product Sampler Handler Certificate, if you're offering samples, and or having appropriate licenses to sell your products. Vendors must display a sign identifying the farm business name and location, maintaining a clean, organized, and safe selling area. And when I say safe, meaning that you don't have boxes or items that people can trip across or trip over as they walk by your booth or next to your booth. If you're handling food, having proper hand washing stations, use sanitized equipment, bring that sanitized equipment with you, don't reuse it, don't use it again if it falls on the ground. Use sanitizers labeled for food contact surfaces, such as tables, dishes, and utensils. And the big one is to train your employees. I know that it's easy to just say, okay, you're my part-time worker, I need you at the market today because I'm short-staffed, and you bring them along, but they don't know how to mix the sanitizer in order to wash the utensils or to wash down the tables as they get dirty. They don't know that they shouldn't handle the produce after handling money directly. These are the things that you need to train your employees on. And that's going to be an important step if you want to make sure that the produce is going to stay safe at the market. Now, talking about sanitizers, I know when I talk with beginning growers or growers that sell at farmers market, and sometimes some regulators, they're not familiar with what type of sanitizers are out there. So I wanted to give you a resource, which you will get also later on, as far as how to select a sanitizer itself. Now, this is a pamphlet that is put out by the Produce Safety Alliance. It is an introduction to selecting the labeled sanitizer, and it goes into the topics such as why should you use a sanitizer? What should you look for in the sanitizer label? How can growers select an appropriate sanitizer for their operation? And that's going to be an important one there. What resources are available to assist you in finding that right sanitizer, plus additional resources if you want to go a little bit deeper into this. And the reason I added this is because the past couple of days, bleach has come up a couple of times. And bleach is fine. Bleach is bought at the grocery store. It's cheap. It's easy to get. And I get that. I really do. But there are different formulations of bleach as well. There's the thick bleach that stops it from splashing, right? And that's really not going to be used if you're trying to use on sanitizing tables or utensils. There's bleach with scents in them, which I believe we talked about a little bit past few days about not being able to use that bleach that have scents in them. So whatever the label says you can do, you can use it for. Remember that the label that you choose for your sanitizer, the label is the law. So whatever it says, it has to be followed. If it doesn't say it can be used on food contact surfaces, then you can't use it. So this is a good pamphlet to start looking at that. Another resource that you have available is on the Produce Safety Alliance, the EPA labeled sanitizers for produce. This is a table that was updated in August of 2025. This probably has about, I don't know, 70 to 100 different types of sanitizers that are out in the marketplace. And anytime a new one comes up, we add it to the list. If you look at the brown tabs that you see there, you have the EPA master label details. It will go into the registration numbers, whether it's labeled for use in irrigation water systems, if you're using irrigation water on your farm, if it's labeled for use on non-porous food contact surfaces. Some of them may be yes, some of them may be no. If you use it for post-harvest water distribution systems on the farm, or for washing your fruits and vegetables. This is a really nice table. It's also labeled to control human pathogens. There's also a section in green on organic materials if you're looking into organic materials, okay? The link that's up there is a YouTube video, which will show you how to locate and use this sanitizer table as you move along in learning about this. Now, there is training available on the FSMA Produce Safety Rule if you want to get some additional information. One of them is through the National Good Agricultural Practices Program that is based at Cornell University. This is a 3-week self-paced course developed to improve the understanding of good agricultural practices, to guide your assessment of risks, and implement practices to reduce risks on your fresh produce farm. It allows you to complete all requirements as permitted by your schedule. There's no required hours of participation, but there is an instructor for the class. It's completed in 3 weeks, and you do get a certificate of completion. This certificate of completion is going to be important if you sell over that $33,000 annual over 3-year period amount that I talked about a little bit earlier. Once you go over that $33,000, you have to have some sort of FSMA training. The National Good Agricultural Practices Program will give you that certificate. Put that certificate on your farmer's market booth, and people will see that you actually have had some food safety training as far as your fruits and vegetables. The second one is the Produce Safety Alliance grower training, and this is required for supervisors on the farm. At least one supervisor from the farm must take this training if they fall under the produce safety rule. It's a one-day course, discusses produce safety, worker health hygiene, wildlife and domesticated animals, water use, post-harvest handling, sanitation, and food safety plans. It's a requirement for all growers that do fall under this federally mandated Food Safety Modernization Act rule. Training dates in Illinois are variable and can be found at the website listed, and there are usually costs associated with this training. There's probably other courses available online if you look, but these are the ones that I'm most familiar with. Now, I talked a little bit about the Produce Safety Alliance. So you as a vendor, once you start getting into all of this, this is where you're going to find all of your resources. In the black box, you'll see those little tabs that says training, PSA curriculum, resources, all those. If you go into the training one, it gives you all the grower training classes that are being held in Illinois, in the United States, and internationally. Yes, we do teach this course internationally as well. PSA curriculum talks about what we teach under the FSMA Produce Safety Rule. The tab that you'd be most interested in will be the resources. This is the one that has everything you're going to need on every little subject based on what you're trying to do on the farm, as well as some food safety plans that you can use and start using for your farm if you don't have them already. If you want more information on the Food Safety Modernization Act, there's a tab there that you can go on. Talks about the Alliance, how to connect with us, and there's also the PSA website in Spanish. So if you do have some workers that don't speak English, but you want them to learn some of this, there is the Spanish websites that you can direct them to as well. There is a food safety team here in Illinois. Her name is Lillian Nabwire, and she is located at the University of Illinois Extension in Urbana. This is her name and contact information. Should you have any additional questions or concerns, you can reach out to her, or my contact information is up in the upper right-hand corner. Again, feel free to contact me. I am associated with the Produce Safety Alliance directly. Basically, that's all I have as far as the vendors. It's just generalized information as far as what to expect, what you need to really keep an idea on, and making sure that the produce with your name on it is not going to make anybody sick. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. So, do we have any questions for Lori? It does look like we've got maybe a couple in the chat box. Looks like
2%
Guy,
of,
yeah, go ahead.
It is indicated that 2% of produce-related illnesses are from mushrooms. Is this due to bacterial agents, or does this include misidentification? I'm not that familiar, but from what I have been dealing with, and some of the concerns with mushrooms would be misidentification, because a lot of the mushrooms can look alike. Some of the poisonous mushrooms can look alike, and it can be very confusing with people that are unfamiliar with mushrooms to try and identify them. And I know when I worked for Extension in small farms and local foods, we were unable to help individuals identify mushrooms because of that concern. So I would say it's a little bit of both, but I'd say mostly because of misidentification. Yep, cannot sell non-domesticated grown or wild gathered mushrooms. That's correct, Jill. Are local health departments familiar with sanitizers used for organic operations? Chlorine and quat would not be favored by anyone doing organic produce. You're correct, but Guy, I'm going to give that to Justin, maybe. I'm sure that you're familiar with all these, and the local health departments are familiar with these sanitizers, or anybody from, I'm sorry, anybody from local health, if they want to comment.
I was gonna say, I don't know about like for organic operations. I'm not really sure on how those fall. Both chlorine and quaternary ammonia at specific levels are good for surface sanitizing and cleaning utensils.
Right.
I don't know if there's something different for the organic side. That's not really in my jurisdiction.
I know that there is thank you. I know that there is a guideline and table for the National Organic Program that lists specific compounds or items, sanitizers that can be used for organic farms. And I believe that's in the Department of Agriculture, but I may be misspeaking. But there is something on the websites up there. If you put in organic production, sanitizers, you should be able to find something on that.
Now, Lori, it's Guy, and I really liked the slide you showed with the matrix of EPA approvals, registrations, and the information. I only asked my question because there are so many sanitizers, like you've pointed out. And when I worked in retail in a former life, we focused on chlorine and quat, rarely iodine. In the dairy world, we don't use chlorine and quat. We use organic acids or peroxyacetic acids and other things, but it's also become an issue when we have a plant that wants to do an organic dairy product. And all of a sudden, they're pulling out some really oddball sanitizers. So I just wanted to put that idea out there for people to think about.
Yeah, and that chlorine bleach can really be detrimental to some of the machineries, and metals and things like that if you're using that. So that's the biggest things with the organic is that you really need to be careful. And if you are organic, make sure that you talk to your organic inspector. He or she may have individual products that have been used in the past by other organic growers that you can start using as well. So there's a lot of areas that you can go out and find. Yep. Bleach mixture is not effective after 24 hours, requires a longer wet time on the surface. You're correct about that, Jill. Thank you. Local health departments don't license organic farms, though, so we wouldn't expect organic standards, is my understanding. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you again so much, Lori, for all of your information. That was really great. I think we have just one more speaker. So, Anna, if you want to go ahead and get started to talk about some retail permits.
Sure, just a second. Try to get this going.
And Anna, while you're getting started, if you want, I can go ahead and put in the evaluation in the chat box so everyone has that before the end of the program.
Yeah, sure. Yep. I also will have a QR code for it at the end too, but
Okay,
yes,
very
please
good.
do. I will probably have to talk a little fast. I started adding slides as I was sitting here, and we got caught back up on time. So I'll try to get through these.
Anna,
Yeah, so yeah.
we're seeing your notes.
Oh, okay. What about now?
I don't see anything right now. Now we're good.
Okay. She's precious. She's had a long day. She took her a few minutes to get going. All right. Like I said, this presentation is called Ready, Set, Inspect. This is understanding retail food permits. If you have been with us all 3 days, I apologize in advance. It's going to be kind of the same material that we've talked about the last couple of days that Dare and I split the first day, and then Dare did yesterday, and then I pulled some from today. I tried to add a little bit flair to it today just to give a little bit more or just things to look out for. Now, if this is your first day, welcome. This is going to be the highlight of your day, so I'm glad to have you guys with us. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, yeah, she is slow today. Perfect. Okay, so why the regulation of food is so important. So the number one goal, if you ask anybody to do with food regulation, they're going to say that our ultimate goal is that we want to protect public health. So we want to make sure that we are reducing the risk of foodborne illness, that we are reducing the risk of possible errors that are happening, making sure that food is being handled safely, and then, of course, following the law. So it is required by federal and state to have a food program and that it's regulated and permitted appropriately. So even though our ultimate goal is to protect public health, we also want to make sure that we're ensuring that all of these things are happening at the same time. So what do you think happens if you open without a permit? I can't see the chat, so if anybody is writing, you guys will have to let me know. Oh. Well, I can tell you that it is like a field trip day at school and no permit or no permission slip. So your mom or dad did not sign it, which ensures complete chaos. So Kevin doesn't get to go. He has to stay home. He does not get to be part of all of the celebrations. Originally, I had put dumpster fire, but I decided that that probably wasn't the appropriate response. So I used sort of an analogy to say, you didn't get your permission slip, you didn't have the permit, you don't get to participate. So who regulates retail food? So Illinois Department of Public Health, which is us. Dara and I, we set that minimum standard and we support the local health departments with technical assistance. There's approximately 97 certified local health departments in Illinois. And those make up those county health departments that you deal with and that you get most of your permits through. And ultimately, their goal is the ones that are going to be your food safety expert. If you have questions, you're going to contact them. They may permit or license you. And then, of course, they also ensuring and inspecting and making sure that you are following the rules. Looks like my formatting got off a little bit, but yes, so as far as IDPH, so Illinois Department of Public Health Food Protection Program, the retail food makes up Dara and I. So Dara is the food program manager. She oversees the food protection program, including retail and manufacturing. So she is kind of that top of that umbrella for the food protection for retail and manufacturing. And then under retail is me. So I provide all of the technical or training that goes with retail food. So anything that falls under retail, I'm your girl. You can call, you can email, whatever you need to do. I'm here to help you guys. I just wanted to add this picture in because Dara had a picture yesterday at the farmer's market, and I went through all of my pictures yesterday and I could not find a single one where I was at a farmer's market or fair or festival or anything. So I pulled this one, which was just to show that Dara does let me out sometimes and do like live trainings and public speaking. So this room was very intimidating because it was one of the government buildings, but super fun. Okay, so your local county health departments, those are going to be, like I said, your local food safety expert. They issue the permits, and then they also provide any additional resources. So if they don't know the answer, they can call us, or you can call us, or we can find you that guidance and help you figure out what that answer is and what you're looking for. I've got Stinky Pete here just to tell you guys that we are not the villain. So I know that sometimes it's tough getting around some regulations and understanding rules. And, we feel it as well sometimes when we're out there at those farmers markets and fairs. But we're not the villain. We really ultimately are there to protect public health and be a resource for you. So just question, do you know who your local health department is? I know there's several on today that have been listening in. So also gaining that extra knowledge for you, but we do have ways that you can find out who your local health department is or who your contact person is. If you don't know, feel free to email us. I've got our information at the end and we can definitely connect you if you're unsure. Okay, so we talked about kind of the why and the goal of food. Let's talk about now that why it's important to be permitted or inspected under retail food. So ultimately, we want to prevent people from getting sick. We want to make sure that the focus is of foodborne illness. I believe the statistics are still the same, that there are 1 in 6 people that will get a foodborne illness. And every year, 48 million people are sick from foodborne illnesses. So our goal, and that's just the reported ones, that's people that actually get a diagnosis or go to the hospital. This isn't even counting ones that maybe get ill or they're not tested at the doctor's office or at the hospital. So this number could be astronomically different. Our goal is to keep that number as low as possible so that we can prevent people from getting sick. Another reason for the permitting inspection under retail food is that we can catch those problems early. So something that you might find as a small issue, like maybe a cooler that's running too warm, or maybe not washing your hands for only 10 seconds and not 20 seconds, may not seem like a big issue. However, it can slowly turn into a major outbreak. So just by you not washing your hands for that full 20 seconds and really rubbing in and going up your arm, if you had come in contact with something that now has spread to somebody else and has spread to somebody else and has spread to somebody else, you're not stopping that problem. You're making that small issue that could potentially be a larger issue down the line. I just want to point out that the faster that you fix these habits or these bad habits, the quicker that we feel better as the inspector, knowing that we helped solve an issue for that day. Keep food businesses accountable. So yes, I know that that sounds not really risk-based, but it does make sure that if you know that the health department's coming, they're checking up on you, they're making sure that you're following all the rules and regulations. Also, most of them are unannounced, so you don't know that they're coming. It helps keep you kind of in line and not cutting corners to save time or money. Again, like I said earlier, I really strive that we educate, we don't just enforce. So we want to be the on-site coach. We want to help you understand if you don't understand, or help you identify a different way to do something if maybe the way that you have been doing it isn't working. So we aren't just out there checking boxes. If you have questions, we're there to help you. And then building that public confidence. So food inspections turn hope it's safe into we know it's safe. So having that confidence that, yes, I checked that chicken temperature and I know that it was 165, not, well, it might have been 165, but I'm not really sure. So definitely is building confidence. It's giving a better reputation for you when you're out there. when we make the food inspections available online, if you get a good, zero risk factor, you're happy, you're excited, you want to share that. So it definitely builds your confidence as business owners. So just the 5 major risk factors. I know that Justin and Dara both covered this yesterday, but it really is a big important part of what we are looking for. So those 5 major risk factors for foodborne illness is the 5 key elements that we're really trying to focus on, and we know that those are going to be the most causing for foodborne. So this one, I just wanted to display the 5 different risk factors, but honestly, I just didn't want to list them. So I went to good old Chat GPT and I said, tell me about what this means. And I thought these were kind of funny and wanted to share. So poor personal hygiene, it's like shaking hands after the bathroom and then making a sandwich. Ugh, gross. Food from unsafe sources, so like buying meat out of someone's trunk on the side of the road. Inadequate cooking, like microwaving a frozen meal and eating it cold in the middle. Improper holding temperatures, like leaving your fridge open all day. And then contaminated equipment, chat's covering, like using what's that say? The same towel to dry dishes and wipe the floor. So all of these, I think, really kind of hit the nail on what we don't want to see. And all of these definitely could be contributors to foodborne illness. Just some show and tell. I know that you guys like examples and you like visuals, and I scoured my phone and my computer yesterday and wanted to show you the 5 different risk factors that you do come across, or that we come across as establishment or in the establishments. I know a lot of these aren't necessarily farmers market, and I know that that's kind of what we're focusing on today, are vendors, but I still felt like they were appropriate enough to show you guys. So here, and like I said, almost every single one of these pictures were something that I saw as my time as an inspector. So poor personal hygiene is number 1. So as you can see here, we have 2 different scenarios of poor personal hygiene. This hand sink here, first of all, was completely blocked, and then also the cans, pretty sure they were beer cans in the hand sink. So we definitely know what we're prioritizing here is, I guess, washing the beer cans over washing our hands. This one here is a picture that it was my first week as an inspector, and I went to lunch with my family on the weekend, and I was telling them all about it. And then the first thing this lady does is put her hands on the cake to carry it out. So my sister nudged me because I was like, oh, kind of gasped. And she said, I don't want to sit by you anymore. Like, I can't handle this. I kind of hate that I don't see reaction. So most of the time, whenever I show these types of pictures, you get the gasp. So hopefully you're gasping on mute.
I'm gasping, don't worry.
It is this is the hard part about it, is when you can't see that reaction. Okay, so food from unsafe source. This is definitely ones that you may see either cottage food or at a farmer's market. Why this matters is you can't make unsafe food safe. If it's contaminated at the source. So if it's coming from the source and it's already contaminated or there's something wrong with it, we need to know where it came from. So it's very important that all the labeling and proper information is available. And that's why with the cottage food, we are such sticklers about all that information that's on the label, because ultimately, since it is being prepared in your home, we want to make sure that if this person takes it, they know where it came from, they know that it wasn't produced in a commercial kitchen, and that we know who to contact if something were to happen. Does anybody know what is in that first picture? Anybody have an idea?
Is it like naan?
Nope, it's cheese.
Oh, wow.
It's rolls of wheels of cheese. Yeah. Yep. Not only cheese, it was completely covered in mold when they found it, but that's another story for another day. Inadequate cooking. So this is that last chance to kill pathogens. If you miss it, nothing's going to fix it. So you have one last chance when you are cooking something to get to that proper temperature. If you don't meet it, you are not killing those pathogens to make sure that that everything is potentially safe. So this is definitely one that we see often from an unnamed place, although you might be able to figure it out. Didn't do very good hiding that name. And then this one, you can't see the thermometer, but it was at 157. So as you know, with poultry, it needs to be cooked to 165. So just showing, where we were at during that cooking process. Improper holding temperatures. So we see this one a lot with crock pots, where they try to either reheat it to hot hold, or that they're trying to just hold it in a crock pot. With that one, we need to make sure that it's staying out of that danger zone. Same with this one, it says jam. I think it was actually jambalaya. This was something that we found in the refrigerator 2 days later that hadn't been moved in or out. So as you can see, definitely some sort of temperature abuse for there, that it was still sitting at 61, or maybe we had a refrigerator problem. So these are definitely common temperature issues that we see all the time. So it matters because when food is left in that danger zone, it's allowing that bacteria to multiply and grow and grow and grow until it gets to a point where once it gets in your belly, it could make you sick. And then finally, so contaminated equipment or cross-contamination is the final risk factor. So this is where we're allowing, by some of our own mistakes, that to spread the pathogens around. So that first picture is poultry that's all cut up with no lid, that is just seeping into pork, I believe it is, which, if you are a foodie or in the food world or know cook temperatures, chicken has a higher temperature than pork. So if you are not cooking that pork to the same amount as the chicken, you're probably going to have an issue. The one in the top is a tongs that one of the cooks was grabbing and then placing right back on the garbage can, which is where it's resting. And then my ultimate favorite is the sanitizer bucket has onions in it, and we found that in one of the refrigerators. So definitely lots of cross-contamination. We know that if you have a sanitizer bucket that was used for toxic chemicals, it's not okay to then use for cooking or holding food. So this one was definitely one that I thought I would never see, and had to snap a picture of it. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what the risk factors are, some examples of what risk factors and what we're kind of looking for in the establishments. So retail food establishments come in many shapes and sizes. There's different examples. So we've got different restaurants, coffee shops, grocery stores, cottage food, which I know that we've had Jenna talk about earlier, mobile food trucks and temporary food, catering, and then of course our farmers market. So all of these different types of establishments make up our retail food. Just quickly, the kind of just showing the divide of what falls under food protection. So local health departments are the ones that permit for the temporary food for food establishments, including mobile, cottage food registrations, and then the farmers market permit with IDPH. So under food, dairies, and devices, under food protection program is wholesale. So we register wholesale processors and warehouses. And then our retail, the only thing that we permit is that farmer's market sampling certificate. This is just a quick resource. I can put the link up at the end. I know that we're kind of strapped for a little bit of time here. But this is just an easy permit style or resource. This is what it's going to look like. It's also available on our website. Dara, I don't know if you can link that in there. But this is just a great table to show all the different types of vendor that you might be fit under, and then who permits it, and then what is allowed and not allowed. So these were the ones that I'm just going to briefly talk about that fall under retail, and then hopefully wrap up at the end. So the Cliff Notes version for what a retail food establishment is, they must obtain a retail food permit from the local health department. They have to sell directly to the consumer. So that means they make it and prepare it and sell it directly to the end user. Whereas with wholesale, they make it and then sell it to maybe the restaurant, and then they sell it, or a grocery store, and then they sell it to the end consumer. Basically, like I said, Cliff Notes version is they prepare, store, package, or serve food, and they have to follow the FDA food code. So the FDA food code, Illinois currently has adopted the most recent version, which is the 2022 FDA food code. FDA provides this model of what the food code should look like, and then it's up to each state to adopt areas in it. So in Illinois, we've pretty much adopted the whole thing. There are a few sections in Chapter 8 which have to do with enforcement that we do not adopt. However, those are all left up to the local. Just kind of what the permit process looks like. So like I had talked about earlier, risk-based inspections is how we view our routine inspections. So they may be categorized in low, medium, high, or you might fall under a seasonal, temporary, or mobile permit. The reason why I'm even bringing this up, because not only in the food establishments, if you are following under maybe a temporary or a mobile and you're going to farmers market, you may be classified the same way, whether it's low, which is very minimal prepackaged foods, medium, which is limited food prep, and then high, which is that complex food prep where maybe you're doing lots of cooking, reheating, cooling, and then some don't even call it any of those, and they have their own permit that might be called a seasonal, temporary, or mobile, or all three. So how the permit process works, there is a roadmap to basically getting that concept, contacting your local health department, which is very important, finding out what the application process looks like, maybe having to do a pre-operational inspection. So this might be for your temporary. They may request you to send information in or fill something out to kind of show what you're doing, what types of equipment that you're using. That kind of falls along with the plan review, the construction, and then that pre-operational, where the health department will be reaching out to you to make sure that you're following all the rules. And then the permits issued, depending on what their enforcement policy is, they may come back for a 30-day follow-up, or you might just fall under that routine inspection. So if you're at a farmer's market and you're maybe a mobile, they may come out several times throughout the summer or that time period to visit you. So you might see that pop up. Just important, I want to really highlight that everything kind of leads back to the local health department. So if you're unsure at any part of the process of permitting, follow up with them, because I trust that they will want you to do it right the first time, and as opposed to you having to go back and maybe change something after the fact. Ooh, I'm really strapped on time here, huh? So no permit needed. So raw agricultural commodities with no further processing. So I know Lori talked earlier about whole uncut produce, grains, seeds, beans, nuts, popcorn kernels. different herbs are fresh or dried, and then honey, which I know that I believe Jenna mentioned earlier. All of these do not require permit under retail food. They are considered that raw agricultural commodity. So you can sell those at a farmer's market without having to get any other additional permitting. So that farmer's market permit, it's issued by the local health department. It covers farmers selling frozen TCS foods with the main ingredient grown or raised on the farmer's farm. The meat, poultry, dairy, and eggs that are raised or grown on the farm. Can't see the end of my slide again. The farmer on the farm, the farmer is selling that food product, and then they may have to obtain a permit from the local health department if they chose to follow that permit. So some of them opted out and do not offer that permit type. We talked in length about farmers market sampler earlier, so just kind of the short version. This is something that was issued by or is issued by IDPH. It can be in lieu of a temporary food permit. So if you just want to sample maybe your world famous strawberries at a farmer's market, you can apply for this permit and then be able to sample it without any other permits required. You have to meet some requirements to sell that product. So when you apply for it, you have to check off the things that you'll have. So maybe a hand washing sink, 3-compartment sink. So lots of questions that they'll ask you. And then you'll have to do some training. So either a certified food protection manager or a food handler with additional training. Just the process. Again, we can make these slides available because I know it's already 3 and I bet you guys are itching to get out of here. But all of this is on our website, so that QR code is linked. We can put the link at the end too. Cottage food, again, it's a registration. It's issued by the local health department. And then I know Jenna went into links about that, so I'm not going to talk much more about it. Just know that that is a type of retail permit that falls under retail food that the locals regulate. Temporary food, so this is a type of food establishment. They cannot operate for more than 14 consecutive days in conjunction with a single event or celebration. That is the definition that Illinois has currently in our codes. You have to be permitted with your local health department. So definitely if you have something that you're wanting to retail at a farmer's market under temporary food, reach out to them. They'll permit you. They may even come and inspect you. So I know that some counties have rules where maybe they only will come out after 2 days, or some come out after every single event. This is on-site preparation, so nothing can be served or prepared at home. It all has to be prepared and then served on-site. And then just another one that you're going to see is that mobile food truck. So a mobile food establishment falls under that same definition of a retail food establishment. The only difference is that it is mobile. It still should follow all of the same rules as a restaurant that is like a brick and mortar. So you have to obtain a permit from the local health department where you plan to operate. Most of the time you're going to see immediate service of ready-to-eat foods. There are a few times that they'll let you cook things or maybe reheat if you've got a approved commissary that you've come to an agreement with your local health department. Some do not need a commissary. They may be self-contained, so they can keep everything on their truck. But this is part of that process, plan review process that you will go through with your health department when you connect with them. Same with the temporary food is that you cannot prep food at home on a mobile food truck. So if you're not able to do it on the truck, then it has to be done in a commissary kitchen. Woo, okay. So that was all the permits. I apologize for how fast I went. So I'm not doing too bad over time. But like I said, I added some things just in case. But some takeaways that I just want to share. Food safety is a shared responsibility amongst food businesses and public health. So we have to work together the best that we can. There are a lot of options for permitting, so take your time to review. So as you can see, I named off several different avenues that you might take that for your route into food. So definitely use your options, look at your options, do your homework, connect with your health department early. So the earlier, the better. I promise you that you are not bothering us when you contact us. So like I said earlier, we really want to make sure that you're doing it right. Consider our resources. So if you're looking for something and after all the presentations today, there's such great resources that are available out there. So feel free to reach out to us and make sure that we provide those to you if you didn't grab them today. And then risk factors remain consistent across any food operation. So no matter what the ultimate goal is, looking at those 5 foodborne illness risk factors, whether you are doing cottage food to a full service restaurant, it still stays consistent. Those are still the things that we're keeping a look at. Whew, all right, so thank you guys. Thanks for bearing with me those few extra minutes. This is a link to that QR code. I believe Jenna posted it earlier in the chat. And then this is our contact information. So if you need to get a hold of Dara and I, or you have a question, or we can lead you to a resource that you're looking for, we're always happy to help. All right. And
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Anna. That was wonderful.
Sure.
I know it's always hard going last. That's the tough spot. So you did great. It does look like there are a few questions in the chat. So it looks like, what about convenience stores that serve food?